In the dim, murky stillness of the forest, a harsh voice shattered the silence. "Get lost, you worthless maggot! Go eat dirt!" The shout was followed by a forceful shove that snapped Li Meng out of his daze. Dizzy and disoriented, he blinked rapidly as his eyes adjusted to the twilight gloom. What greeted him was a grotesque sight, an entire group of gangly, green-skinned creatures leering at him. They were hideous, with oversized bellies on frail, sinewy frames. Pointed ears twitched atop clownish faces, their jagged teeth glinting with saliva as they tore into raw meat like wild animals. With each sickening crunch, bones shattered like dry twigs beneath their jaws. A nauseating sound of flesh being devoured echoed through the woods, sending shivers down Li Meng's spine. What the hell is this place? His pulse quickened. He looked down instinctively at his own hands and froze. They were green, thin, unnaturally so. No, this can't be real. His fingers trembled. What the hell happened to me? As he raised his eyes again, he noticed strange, glowing text above the creatures' heads, floating like labels in a video game. Name, Gobu. Race, Goblin. Level 4. Strength, 7. Defense, 4. Agility, 6. Magic, 0. Charm, 0. Luck, 2. A status screen, he muttered, stunned. Did I transmigrate into a game world? Just as panic began to swell in his chest, he forced himself to calm down. He took a deep breath, and a strange sensation answered his will. A pale golden screen shimmered into view, visible only to him. Name, Gobu Meng. Race, Goblin. Level 1. Strength, 4. Defense, 6. Agility, 5. Magic, 3. Charm, 0. Luck, 11. Skill, Devour. Chance to acquire abilities from devoured magical beasts. Life Simulation System. Active. Available simulations. 1 per month bonus simulations. +1 for 10 Tier 1 magic crystals. Choose a reward based on performance after each simulation. Begin life simulation. A life simulation system. Li Meng stared, baffled. So this is my cheat. The goblins around him were busy feasting, shoveling raw entrails into their mouths with glee. As grotesque as it was, his new goblin instincts stirred. His stomach growled. Gobu Meng, want some intestines? A nearby goblin chirped cheerily, holding out a dripping, foul-smelling strand of offal. It squelched in his hands, filled with green, half-digested contents. The stench was horrifying, and yet his goblin body found it oddly tempting. "I am not hungry," Li Meng blurted, stumbling backward. Even though it smelled like fermented sewage, his new instincts whispered that it was delicious. Unable to bear it, Li Meng turned and fled into the deeper woods. Behind him, the goblin, Gobu, tilted his head in confusion. Wasn't Gobu Meng always the first to grab the intestines? He shrugged and chomped into the green-stuffed meat with delight. Li Meng finally collapsed under a twisted tree, chest heaving. The dense forest canopy cast eerie shadows around him. But at least here, he could think. After a few minutes of silence, he opened his status screen once more. His resolve hardened. System, he whispered, start life simulation. Simulation begin. You awaken in the forest, disoriented. You return to the goblin nest with the hunting team. You meet the goblin leader, Gobu Ba. His power intimidates you. Ambitious and unwilling to remain weak, you seek strength by devouring magical beasts. You venture into the forest's depths, hungry for power. You discover a lowland dragon. Its skills tempt you. Choose your action. Charge the dragon head-on. Try to trap and ambush the dragon. Return to ask Gobu for help. Li Meng frowned. Definitely not option 1. A lowland dragon was no joke. Suicide. Option 2. Without tools, that's a gamble. If he failed to lure it, or worse, became the bait himself, it'd be game over. Option 3. You return to the nest and ask Gobu for help. He punches you, calling you an idiot. He says even a full team would struggle with a dragon. The two of you? Suicide. You flatter Gobu, boosting his ego. Eventually, he agrees. Together, you ambush the dragon. You fail. Gobu dies. You're gravely injured. Weakened and unable to hunt, you're seen as prey. One night, other goblins swarm you and tear you apart. Life simulation end. Score 20. Choose a reward. +1 level, 5 score. +5 attribute points, 5 score. +1 luck point, 5 score. Li Ming stared at the screen, grimacing. What a ridiculous death. Still, it taught him something vital. The simulation showed potential futures. If he followed the same steps, he'd end up in the same place. This was more than a power. It was a survival tool. All right, time to make it count. Just then, crunching leaves warned him. Gobu approached, eyeing him strangely. You sick? He asked, but there was hunger in his gaze. Li Ming saw it clearly. To these goblins, weakness meant food. His body tensed. System, he whispered, consume all score points. Add them to strength. 20 score points consumed. +20 strength. Updated strength, 24. A blazing warmth rushed through his veins. His frail body crackled and swelled with power. Muscles surged. Bones thickened. His fists clenched with newfound strength. Gobu was still walking toward him when, wham! Li Ming's fist crashed into his face, launching him several meters into the air. The goblin tumbled across the dirt, moaning. Li Ming stood tall, green muscles bulging, a wicked grin on his face. From now on, he growled, I'm the boss. Gobu, trembling, nodded furiously and scrambled away. Goblins respected only one thing, power. And today, Gobu Ming had just become the strongest goblin in the nest. The hunt's over, boss. Everyone's heading back to the nest. Gobu Da's cheerful voice rang out, his bruised face now wearing a wide, sycophantic grin. Despite the thrashing he had received earlier, his simple goblin brain didn't retain grudges or complex thoughts. He scampered up to Gobu Ming like a loyal mutt reunited with its master after years apart. Then let's move. Lead the way. Yes, boss. Right this way. With an exaggerated spring in his step, Gobu took the lead, weaving through the dense forest underbrush. Li Ming followed behind, silent and watchful. Before long, they caught up with the rest of the hunting party. Nearly 100 goblins trudged noisily through the forest, chattering and bickering in their guttural tongue. They were a sorry-looking bunch, short, scrawny, and armed with crude weapons. Most carried wooden clubs or jagged stone axes. Hunting wild forest boars with such primitive tools should have been suicide, but goblins were nothing if not persistent. A few of the larger goblins carried rusted iron swords or maces, and some wore patchwork leather armor that hung awkwardly from their hunched frames. These were the sub-leaders, the small bosses, each commanding their own motley crew of followers. As for Gobu, he was just a small boss under a small boss. Nothing special. After nearly 4 hours of trudging through the forest, the trees finally gave way to the looming shadow of a mountain. The stench hit Li Ming first, putrid and heavy, like rotting meat in a closed cellar. The goblin nest revealed itself at the foot of the mountain, a yawning cave mouth surrounded by towering piles of bones. The remains of magical beasts, forest animals, and even humanoids. The foulness of death clung to the place like a shroud. Yet, the goblins didn't seem to mind. They chattered excitedly as they filed into the darkness. No light? No torches? Li Ming quickly realized why. Goblins didn't need light. Their vision thrived in darkness, and they instinctively preferred damp, shadowed environments. This cave wasn't just their home, it was their domain. As they entered a massive underground chamber, the noise swelled. Goblins swarmed the area, raising their weapons and shouting with worshipful glee toward a towering figure seated on a throne-like stone slab. A giant among goblins. It was a monster in every sense of the word, green-skinned, muscle-bound, and nearly 3 meters tall. In the sea of hunched creatures, it looked like a god among rats. Name, Gobu. Race, Goblin Leader. Level, 54. Strength, 195. Defense, 106. Agility, 101. Magic, 37. Skills, Limb Enhancement, LV3. Berserk, LV1. The moment Li Meng saw the stats, a chill crept down his spine. This thing could snap me like a twig. Around the massive leader stood his elite guard, goblin champions and warriors. Ordinary goblins were barely 1.3 meters tall, but these monsters stood between 2 and 2.5 meters, armed with brutal weapons and thick hides. On the cave walls, Li Meng noticed dozens of small cells, iron-barred, foul-smelling, and full of whimpering creatures. He realized what they were immediately: breeding pens. Female animals of various species, groundhogs, forest pigs, and worse, were imprisoned there. Goblins had no native females of their kind and reproduced by mating with compatible female creatures. Their horrifying biology meant no reproductive isolation. As long as the size matched, they would mate. The gestation period? A single month. Offspring? 10, 20, even more depending on the partner. With enough food, goblins could reach adulthood in just another month. It was a nightmare, and Li Meng was now part of it. His eyes swept past the crude, ongoing breeding acts within the pens, and he nearly gagged. How the hell did I end up like this? What kind of twisted joke is this world playing on me? He looked away quickly, trying to bury his disgust. And then something shimmered. Near the far wall, nestled between the cracks in the stone, a faint, flickering glow caught his eye. Li Meng moved closer, pretending to stretch and scratch. Embedded within the wall were faintly glowing stones, magic crystals. Their soft light bathed the stone with shades of blue, green, and violet. He subtly leaned into the corner and began prying them free. 1, 2, 3, 10 crystals in total. Enough for now. These might be my way out of this filthy life. Boss, what are those shiny rocks for? Gobu's curious voice startled him. Li Meng turned with a forced grin, swallowing down the flash of killing intent that surged through him. Nothing. Just pretty things. I like collecting them. Thankfully, Gobu's interest didn't extend beyond food and sleeping. Oh, okay. Shiny is nice. Let's find a place to sleep, boss. Night had fallen outside, and the cave was already settling down. Dozens of goblins curled up in corners, some snoring, others fighting over scraps. The following days were grueling. Li Meng lived as a goblin, hunting during the day, returning by night. He kept a low profile, using his knowledge from the simulation to avoid mistakes. Every goblin was required to return with meat. Failure meant punishment, whippings, starvation, or worse. Success might be rewarded with the right to mate, a coveted status among goblins. Children born this way were loyal to their father alone. Their scent acted like a bond, allowing goblins to form miniature factions within the tribe. On the 5th day, deep in the forest about 10 kilometers from the nest, Li Meng made his move. He trailed behind the others until one lone goblin strayed a little too far. With a quick, silent strike, he knocked it out cold. The goblin groaned, eyes fluttering open to see Li Meng looming above him. You belong to me now. Understood. The goblin, dazed and terrified, nodded vigorously. Li Meng grinned. Good. Get up. Follow me. As they walked through the forest, Li Meng casually placed a hand on the goblin's shoulder. The goblin turned, puzzled by the gesture. And in that moment, Li Meng's eyes narrowed.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
From now on, I'm your boss. Got it. The goblin didn't understand and clearly wasn't convinced, glaring angrily. It raised its wooden club and charged at Li Meng with a loud cry. Li Meng punched out, hitting the goblin square in the face. With a scream, the goblin flew several meters before crashing to the ground. Its scream caught the attention of the goblins ahead. But seeing it was just a fight among their own, they paid no mind. The leading big goblin didn't even bother to turn around. Follow me. Li Meng pointed behind him, speaking arrogantly to the goblin on the ground. The goblin quickly got up and obediently followed behind Gobu. Just like that, Li Meng picked up over a dozen followers along the way. When a number of goblins behind him reached 13, Li Meng stopped forcibly recruiting more. Any further, and the leading small chiefs might notice. Seeing the time was right, Li Ming gave his followers a signal. Intimidated by Li Ming's power, the goblin followers could only slow their pace. In a dense forest area, Li Ming led the goblin followers away from the main group. Boss, if the boss's boss finds out, we'll be eaten. In the forest, Li Ming jogged with a group of goblin followers. With no destination, they simply wanted to get away from the hunting party. A goblin came up, trembling with fear at leaving the group. What are you afraid of? I'll soon become the boss's boss. Though Li Ming was just making empty promises, the goblin believed him. The fear on its face vanished. Gobu Ming, Gobu Ming. It shouted joyfully, raising its club high. Goblins seemed to have a pack-like nature. As it shouted, the other goblins couldn't help but join in loudly. Stop, don't shout. If you attract powerful magical beasts, we're done for. Li Ming didn't know how vast the forest and mountains outside the goblin lair were. In recent days, the farthest the hunting party had gone was no more than 10 kilometers. The magical beasts encountered were mostly first-tier groundhogs and forest boars. Occasionally, they would encounter wind rabbits capable of magic, but they were too fast and formidable. Every time they encountered wind rabbits, the goblin hunting party suffered heavy losses. Fortunately, wind rabbits were timid and would flee after a panicked attack. If the wind rabbits kept fighting, the hunting party would be wiped out. The goblins quickly shut their mouths, silently following Li Ming. As they walked, the sound of rushing water suddenly came from ahead. A small stream blocked Li Ming's path. Rest for a while, wait here. Li Ming left these words on the riverbank and walked towards the water. Should I look? Staring at the crystal-clear river, Li Ming stopped 5 meters from the water's edge. Goblins didn't have a great need for water. They could replenish fluids from the blood of the food they ate raw. Li Ming was well aware of his appearance. He had been avoiding it these past few days. Though avoiding it, he knew he had become a goblin. He took pleasure in fighting other goblins for food. The stench of blood and flesh was so sweet as he chewed. Finally, Li Ming on the riverbank moved his feet forward. Kneeling by the water, Li Ming looked down at his reflection. Staring at the green-skinned, ugly creature in the water, Li Ming fell into deep thought. Mother ****** K. Kneeling by the water, Li Ming muttered softly. Li Ming stood up, his face full of hostility. If goblins are the only intelligent species in this world, then goblins are the new humans. Reborn as a goblin, this was now a fact. Even if there were humans in this world, they were the aliens. In any game or novel, goblins were always weak. System, start the life simulation. Li Ming wouldn't risk his life recklessly. The life simulation system could simulate his life. He could use the life simulation system to trial and error his future life, predicting potential dangers in advance. Consumes 10 first-tier magic crystals. Starting life simulation. To become stronger, you formed a team. At the river, you were very frustrated, realizing you had become an ugly monster. You were very angry, but you accepted reality and your fate. In the future, you will become the nightmare of all intelligent species. You began a new life, leading your team away from the river. Please make the following choice. 1. Head north to find magical beasts. 2. Head west to find magical beasts. 3. Head east to find magical beasts. 4. Head south to find magical beasts. 5. Do nothing, wait for a chance. The goblin lair was to the south, so the fourth option was out. The hunting party went north, so the first option was not considered. Only east and west were left. After some thought, Li Ming randomly chose one. The third option, you led your team eastward. A giant earth magic bear suddenly appeared. You escaped quickly, narrowly avoiding danger. 3 goblins died on the spot, becoming food for the earth magic bear. Please make the following choice. 1. Realizing your weakness, you find it hard to hunt magical beasts after leaving the hunting party. You decide to return to the hunting party. 2. You think you were just unlucky to encounter a second-tier magical beast, the earth magic bear. The team continues to search for weaker magical beasts. 3. You think the earth magic bear is clumsy and could be hunted, so you decide to take a risk. High risk, high reward, go for it. The third option, As a transmigrator, you consider yourself smart, thinking you're the protagonist and won't fail at anything. You decide to hunt the earth magic bear. You and your followers start digging a trap, spending 3 days to dig a large enough pit. You succeed. The clumsy earth magic bear falls into the trap, but to your despair, you can't kill it by any means. Deviously, you think of using poison. You feed the earth magic bear a groundhog stuffed with poisonous mushrooms, successfully killing it. You devour the earth magic bear, gaining the skill Iron Bones. You return to the hunting party to challenge the big goblin, becoming a small chief. You lead the successful hunting party back to the goblin lair. You receive a reward from Gobu, gaining mating rights. A female wild boar is brought before you. Completing the first mating in front of the tribe is an honor. Please make the following choice. 1. Mate with the wild boar, gain honor. 2. Refuse to mate with the wild boar. 3. Give the credit to the former small chief of the hunting party. These 3 options made Li Ming by the water look conflicted. The first option was repulsive and absolutely not an option. If the partner were human, Li Ming might consider it. But with a wild boar, he'd rather die than choose it. Although it's just a simulation of life, you can choose any option. But since it involves the future, you can't choose recklessly. The second option is obviously a trap. You must know that completing mating in front of the tribe for the first time is an honor. If he refuses, who knows what might happen. The third option, you chose to give the credit to the former small chief. Gobu was furious, believing you desecrated the goblin's honor. You were skinned and tied at the cave entrance as a warning. After 3 days of painful struggle, you died, and your corpse was devoured by your former underlings. Your head was kept by Gobu, and it was soaked in urine every day. Gobu. Li Ming roared angrily at the water's surface. He turned around and glared fiercely at Gobu. What kind of grudge made Gobu use his head as a urinal? Li Ming's roar startled Gobu. Facing the boss's angry gaze, Gobu shrank his neck. He quickly ran towards Li Ming like a frightened puppy. Boss, I'm here. Li Ming raised his fist, wanting to vent his anger. Gobu looked terrified, collapsing to the ground. In the end, Li Ming didn't throw the punch. Why bother with a goblin? A goblin is just a creature that bullies the weak and fears the strong. Even if you're the boss, if you get injured, you might be killed and eaten by your underlings. Li Ming gave Gobu a glare and ignored him. As a transmigrator, the goddess of fate did not favor you. Your life was as short as a raindrop. Your death was worthless, merely a joke. You were the first goblin in history to die for refusing honor, becoming a joke among goblins. Even thousands of years later, you remain the funniest joke in goblin history, laughed at even by humans. Simulation of life ends. Score 35. Please choose a reward from the following. 1. Consume 5 score points for +1 level. 2. Consume 5 score point for +5 attributes. 3. Consume 10 score point for +1 luck. Right now, strength is the most important. Luck is important, but not that crucial. After all, luck only affects the simulation of life. Increase level. Consume 35 score points, level +7. Li Ming felt a warm current surge through his body. His bones crackled, feeling both sore and painful. His vision seemed to rise significantly, and his hands became more robust. Li Ming quickly opened the character panel. Name, Gobu Ming. Race, Goblin. Level, 8. Strength, 32. Defense, 13. Agility, 11. Magic, 5. Charm, 0. Luck, 11. Devour. Chance to gain the opponent's skills by devouring magical beast flesh. Goblins are indeed a weak race. Even at level 7, the attributes improved only slightly. Looking at the underwhelming attributes on the character panel, Li Ming deeply regretted it. Had he known, he would have used all the score points on attributes. Boss, are you about to evolve? Seeing the boss looking taller, the fear in the goblin's eyes intensified. Li Ming looked at Gobu, and his expression froze. Goodness, why did Gobu seem so short now? No, it's not that Gobu became shorter. It's that he grew taller. Li Ming quickly turned around and looked down at his reflection in the water. Indeed, he had grown taller. He also looked more handsome than an ordinary goblin. He had grown from 1.3 meters to a full 1.5 meters. It seems that leveling up isn't entirely useless. At level 10, he should be able to evolve into a big goblin. Although this simulation of life only lasted 7 days, it wasn't without gains. "Let's go, move out," Li Ming shouted spiritedly. This startled the goblin underlings into a shock. Then Li Ming led the goblin underlings to cross the river. You walk in front." The stream wasn't very wide, and the water was shallow. After successfully crossing the river, Li Ming assigned 3 goblin underlings to walk ahead. Since 3 goblin underlings were destined to die, not one could be spared. The simulation of life predicted the future line. To achieve a good outcome, this part of the future line before hunting the Earth Magic Bear must not change. The 3 goblins exchanged glances. Being weak goblins, they naturally didn't want to walk in front. But under the boss's intimidation, they had no choice but to obey. With Li Ming's urging, the team left the riverbank and ventured into the forest. 2 hours later, in a certain forest in the east. The forest was quiet and dim. Walking in the forest, Li Ming observed his surroundings with a vigilant expression. Although the future line showed he wouldn't die under the Earth Magic Bear's claws. But in the known future line, if you actively seek death, you will still die. That would mean the future line has already changed. Roar dash. The unexpected came suddenly. A beast roar echoed in the forest. The sound was very close, coming from the left. The beast's roar made Li Ming's eyes light up. At this moment, he finally confirmed that the simulation of life could foresee his future. A massive black shadow suddenly charged out from the dense forest on the left. It was a bear larger than 3 adult brown bears combined. Though chubby, its running speed was incredibly fast. Its target was the goblins, its prey. "Ah!" A goblin walking in front screamed. The enormous shadow of the Earth Magic Bear terrified the goblins. The goblins wanted to flee, but it was too late. The Earth Magic Bear opened its huge, ferocious mouth and bit a goblin. With a swing of its massive paw, the sound of bones breaking echoed chillingly. 2 goblins were flung away like rag dolls. They flew over 10 meters before crashing into a tree. "Run!" Li Ming screamed and dashed in the direction they came from. Seeing this, the other goblins panicked and fled in a hurry. They ran and ran. After half an hour of running, Li Ming finally stopped. Under a big tree in the forest, Li Ming leaned against the trunk, panting heavily. A second-tier magical beast is indeed terrifying. Even though the target wasn't him, Li Ming felt the oppressive sense of death. Fortunately, the Earth Magic Bear didn't have magical skills. Otherwise, none of them would have escaped. Boss. Soon after, the underlings followed the boss's scent and found him. The encounter with the Earth Magic Bear left the goblins utterly terrified. Their ugly faces twisted into a mess. Some goblins were even trembling. "Don't be afraid. Do you want to eat bear meat?" Hearing about eating, the goblin underlings' eyes lit up. They quickly nodded. The previous terror vanished. "If you want to eat, you have to listen to me. Gobu can you 3 go catch groundhogs. Don't eat them. I want them half dead. Also, gather some of the most poisonous mushrooms and bring them to me. Go!" Gobu and Gobu turned and dashed into the depths of the forest. Groundhogs aren't very big and are the easiest prey to catch. Goblin staple food is groundhogs because they're everywhere in the forest. As long as you see a hole, there's usually a nest of groundhogs inside. "Follow me." With Gobu leaving, only 9 goblin underlings were left. Li Ming led the underlings back in the direction they had fled from earlier. "Boss, there's an Earth Magic Bear over there. It's dangerous." Seeing their boss leading them towards where the Earth Magic Bear was, the goblins all looked terrified. One goblin timidly stepped forward and stammered. "With me in front, what are you afraid of? Don't you want to eat bear meat?" Hearing the boss say this, it seemed to make sense. Even if the Earth Magic Bear appeared, it would only attack the boss in front. If the boss got eaten, they could return to the hunting party. That would be great. The goblins, who were initially a bit scared, became excited again. Seeing these silly goblin underlings, Li Meng rolled his eyes. Before long, Li Meng led the underlings to crouch behind some bushes. We're close. With their keen sense of smell, Li Meng could already detect the foul stench of the earth magic bear and the scent of goblin flesh. This indicated that the earth magic bear wasn't far from here. Li Meng felt the soil on the ground. It was soft. Dig a pit here, a big one. The bushes could obscure the view, and that dumb bear would definitely fall for it. The goblins exchanged glances, wondering why the boss wanted them to dig a pit. Dig? Don't you want to eat bear meat? At the mention of bear meat, the goblins started drooling. They quickly used their wooden sticks and hands to dig into the soil. Keep it quiet. Don't make too much noise. Under Li Meng's command, the goblin underlings diligently dug the pit. Time ticked by, and the pit gradually became deeper and larger. Boss, I'm back. 5 hours later, Gobu and 2 others returned. Each carried a groundhog the size of a small dog. Put them here, and keep catching more. The goblin's efficiency in digging was too low. The earth magic bear was a massive creature. To trap it, the pit had to be big enough. It takes 3 days in simulation, and that seems true. All right. Seeing their digging companions, a hint of schadenfreude flashed in Gobu's eyes. Catching groundhogs was much easier than digging. Boss, I'm off. The 3 of them dashed back into the depths of the forest. Li Meng, meanwhile, carried a groundhog and stealthily approached the earth magic bear's location. The trap would take 3 days to complete. He couldn't let the earth magic bear leave. He had to keep it nearby. And food was the biggest lure for a brainless magical beast like the earth magic bear. After venturing several miles into the forest, Li Meng finally stopped. This distance should be about right. Looking around, Li Meng tore open the groundhog's belly with a swipe. The scent of blood immediately filled the air. Li Meng tossed the groundhog away and quickly turned to hide in the nearby bushes. Moments later, there was movement in the forest. A massive earth magic bear followed the scent of blood and approached. Its enormous body cast a huge shadow in the dim forest. Seeing the gigantic earth magic bear from the bushes, Li Meng's face showed a look of shock. The oppressive presence of such a large magical beast was overwhelming. It approached the groundhog's corpse and sniffed. The fresh blood excited the earth magic bear. It opened its menacing maw. With one bite, it devoured the entire groundhog, chewing it. The cracking sound of bones made Li Meng's scalp tingle. After finishing the groundhog, the earth magic bear lay down and fell asleep. Earth magic bear. Level 24. Strength 51. Defense 57. Agility 27. Magic 7. Steel muscles and iron bones. LV1. Strength plus 20. Defense plus 20. Agility plus 5. Such terrifying attributes at level 24, steel muscles and iron bones is indeed a great skill. Against such a monster, poison was the only way to kill it. Fortunately, goblins were resistant to poison. No one had ever heard of a goblin being poisoned to death. Sleep. In 3 days, it'll be your end. Li Meng quietly crawled out of the bushes. Then he stealthily left. In the following days, Li Meng periodically scattered bait in the forest. While the earth magic bear enjoyed the feast delivered to its mouth, its day of doom was drawing closer. 3 days later, in the forest where the trap was set, it should be ready, right? Looking at the large pit before him, Li Meng murmured to himself. The trap was 10 meters long and wide, and 20 meters deep, to prevent the earth magic bear from climbing up the dirt walls. The trap was structured to be narrower at the top and wider at the bottom. The dirt walls sloped outward, making it difficult for the earth magic bear to climb up. Go hide around. At this critical moment, Li Meng didn't hesitate. The exhausted goblin underlings quickly scattered into the bushes. Li Meng carried 3 groundhogs and ran towards the earth magic bear's location. About 500 meters from the trap, Li Meng dropped a gutted groundhog. After dropping it, Li Meng sprinted back. He dropped another groundhog about 300 meters from the trap. The last groundhog was dropped less than 100 meters from the trap. After tossing the last groundhog, Li Ming quickly hid behind a large tree, patiently waiting. Time slowly passed, and the forest was silent. Hiding behind the tree, Li Ming was extremely nervous. He was 100 meters from the trap, and although the earth magic bear was clumsy, it wasn't slow. If he slipped up, he'd be done for. Crack! Suddenly, the sound of a breaking branch echoed in the forest. Li Ming's heart tightened, and he looked tense. It's coming, it's coming. Yes, the earth magic bear was coming. The massive shadow gradually emerged from the depths of the forest. Following the scent of blood, it found the groundhog and began to chew. Let's do this. Now's not the time to chicken out. With a determined expression, Li Ming leaped out from behind the tree. Hey, big dumb bear. F*****KU. Li Ming shouted at the earth magic bear. He even gave it the middle finger, an international gesture. The appearance of a goblin startled the earth magic bear. But seeing it was just a tiny creature, a hint of mockery appeared in its blood-red eyes. Li Ming turned and sprinted into the depths of the forest. Seeing its prey run, the earth magic bear let out a roar. Roar! The beast's roar echoed through the forest, startling a flock of birds. Driven by its hunting instincts, the earth magic bear chased after Li Ming. Its massive body made the ground shake as it ran, like a heavy tank charging through. Hearing the approaching noise behind him, Li Ming broke out in a cold sweat. Faster, faster. Li Ming ran recklessly, diving into the bushes with a leap. Hey, big dumb bear. F*****KU. Li Ming emerged from the bushes, shouting at the earth magic bear. Roar! The earth magic bear let out a roar, panting heavily as it charged towards Li Ming. Its massive body crashed into the bushes like a heavy tank. Li Ming quickly ducked back into the bushes. Suddenly, the ground beneath the charging earth magic bear gave way. The bear tried to stop, its hind legs gripping the ground desperately, but it was too late. The momentum sent the earth magic bear tumbling headfirst into the trap. It's done, it's done. Li Ming emerged from the bushes, running joyfully to the edge of the trap. The earth magic bear lay on its back, having fallen awkwardly. It flipped over clumsily, roaring at Li Ming above. It tried to climb out, but couldn't find any leverage. Bear meat, bear meat. The goblin minions cheered as they ran out from their hiding spots. Gobu Ming, Gobu Ming. They shouted loudly by the trap, eyes greedily fixed on the earth magic bear inside. Though the earth magic bear was terrifying at this moment, it was just a piece of meat in the goblin's eyes. Throw in the groundhogs stuffed with poisonous mushrooms. At Li Ming's command, the goblin minions quickly complied. Each carried 2 bloody groundhogs and tossed them into the trap. 1-2, over a dozen groundhogs were thrown in. The earth magic bear was cautious, ignoring the food that was right in front of it. It paid no attention to the bloody groundhogs, struggling to climb out of the trap. Boss, what if it doesn't eat? Li Ming sneered coldly, a hint of mockery in his eyes. A beast without intelligence couldn't be that smart. It will eat, let's go. Li Ming turned and walked away. The goblin minions, somewhat confused, followed behind him. Were they really going to give up the bear meat, just like that? Li Ming left, but not completely. He stopped with the goblin minions under a large tree about 50 meters from the trap. Stay quiet and wait patiently. Li Ming sat down under the tree, instructing the goblin minions. The goblin minions exchanged glances and laid down to sleep soundly. After 3 days of hard work, they were exhausted. Looking in the direction of the trap, a glint of excitement flashed in Li Ming's eyes. In less than an hour, the sound of the earth magic bear's painful roar suddenly echoed from the direction of the trap. The sound was extremely miserable, the wailing resounding through the forest. The pitiful wailing woke the sleeping goblins. The struggle lasted for more than half an hour before the wailing in the trap ceased. It's done, let's go over. Li Ming stood up and ran towards the trap. The goblin minions scrambled to follow behind. When Li Ming reached the trap, he saw the lifeless earth magic bear. The information showed that the earth magic bear was dead. Don't eat the organs. Goblins have strong resistance to poison, but it would still make them uncomfortable for a few days. Li Meng leaped into the trap, landing on the earth magic bear's belly. He raised his claws and began tearing furiously at the bear's hide. The other goblins quickly jumped down, pouncing on the bear's body to feast. The trap couldn't hold the goblins. The soil was soft enough for their claws to dig in. With their claws, goblins could easily climb out. This was why Li Meng dared to jump down directly. In no time, the earth magic bear was gutted by the goblins. Li Meng pulled out the bear's massive heart and began devouring it. "Boss, here, this is the shiny stone you like." Gobu came over with a magic crystal the size of half a fist. The magic crystal was brown, indicating it was earth attribute. Li Meng took the magic crystal and put it away. "Gobu, is the bear meat tasty?" Gobu nodded eagerly. "Delicious. I've never tasted such wonderful meat." "Then go eat. Eat until you're full." Gobu quickly turned and pounced back on the carcass to eat. For a moment, the trap was filled with a strong scent of blood. Devour skill activated. Acquired skill, steel muscles and iron bones. Steel muscles and iron bones. LV1, strength plus 20, defense plus 20, agility plus 5. Li Meng felt a warm current suddenly surge through his body. His entire body crackled with a snap, crackle, pop. Li Meng swung his arms, a look of excitement on his face. He had grown stronger again. "Boss, I can't eat anymore." In less than 2 hours, the goblin minions were all stuffed with big bellies. Looking into the trap, less than a fifth of the earth magic bear's body had been eaten. Gobu, holding his big belly, approached the boss. "Boss, there's still so much meat. Let's stay here for a few days." The greatest wish of goblins is to fill their bellies. Eat and sleep, sleep and eat. That's the life all goblins long for. And today, under the boss's lead, they could finally eat their fill. Moreover, they enjoyed the earth magic bear meat, which was hard even for goblin hunters to come by. At this moment, all the goblins looked at Li Meng with nothing but admiration. No, the blood scent from the earth magic bear's body will attract other powerful magical beasts. Eat your fill, and let's go. Bear meat was good, but the blood scent was too strong. Even in these few hours, Li Meng was on edge, afraid that a powerful magical beast might suddenly appear from the forest. "Boss, let's cut off some good meat to take with us." "No taking. If the leader finds out we hunted an earth magic bear and ate it first, we're done for." Li Meng's words made the goblin minions shrink their necks. Yes, the earth magic bear was a treasure. If they took the leftover meat back, the leader would surely eat them all. "Let's go find the hunting party." Li Meng turned and swiftly climbed out of the trap. The other goblin minions dared not linger, struggling to follow closely. The goblins climbing out of the trap looked back at the body with greed. But their fear of the leader overcame their greed. "Hurry up, keep up." Under Li Meng's urging, the goblin minions reluctantly left the trap. In the following days, Li Meng was single-mindedly searching for the hunting party. The hunting party's outings didn't have a fixed schedule, but generally, they wouldn't be out for more than half a month. If they stayed out too long, it would displease the leader. If they stayed out too long without results, the head of the hunting party would be replaced. Fortunately, goblins had a keen sense of smell, allowing them to avoid dangerous magical beasts in advance. The journey went smoothly, and by the second day, they finally found some traces of the hunting party. Boss, I smell it, it's goblin poop." Walking through the forest, Gobu suddenly jumped up and down, pointing north. He looked at Li Meng, seeking approval. "Let's go check it out." The goblins in the forest quickened their pace and started jogging. Soon, Li Meng heard the clamor of goblins from the forest ahead. In a clearing within the forest, a group of goblins was enjoying a feast. Each goblin was gnawing on a piece of meat with fur still attached. "Ooh!" One goblin seemed to have noticed something. It stood up alertly and shouted loudly. Its warning drew the attention of the nearby goblins. The goblins who were dining quickly grabbed various weapons and stood up. It's me." Under the watchful eyes of the goblins, Li Meng emerged from the bushes with a group of goblin followers. Seeing their own kind appear, the goblins put down their weapons. "What have you guys been up to these days?" At that moment, a rough voice came from behind. A tall, big goblin holding a spiked club walked over. It glared angrily at Li Ming and his group of goblins. This was Gobu Chong, the leader of this hunting party. Seeing Gobu Chong approaching, the goblin followers behind Li Ming shrank their necks. Their bodies retreated repeatedly, faces filled with fear and unease. Li Ming remained unfazed, pointing his club at Gobu Chong. "Gobu Chong, I challenge you." This guy wasn't strong. Although he was a big goblin, his attributes were that of a weakling. Name, Gobu Chong. Race, big goblin. Level, 16. Strength, 26. Defense, 24. Agility, 21. Magic, 6. Haha, Gobu Ming. Have you eaten too much crap to dare challenge me? Gobu Chong laughed heartily, as if he had heard the funniest joke. The goblins behind him also burst into laughter. They laughed so hard they waved their arms and legs, some even rolling on the ground, clutching their stomachs. "What, are you scared?" Li Ming grinned, a mocking expression on his face. Seeing that Li Ming was serious, the smile on Gobu Chong's face disappeared. It grinned viciously, looking greedily at Li Ming. "Gobu Ming, with your tender skin, I'm going to eat you today." Roar dash. With a roar, Gobu Chong charged at Li Ming with his spiked club. He swung the club down towards Li Ming's head. If it hit, his head would likely burst like a shattered watermelon. Gobu Chong grinned viciously, his face filled with excitement and greed. He could already imagine the scene of Gobu Ming's head shattering. Then, just as the club was about to smash onto Li Ming's head, Li Ming moved, his right hand suddenly reaching out, grabbing the spiked club. With a bang, Gobu Chong's club was firmly caught in Li Ming's hand. Although the spikes on the club made Li Ming's hand bleed profusely, Gobu Chong's strike was firmly caught by Li Ming. "No, impossible!" Gobu Chong screamed, frantically pulling at the club. But in Li Ming's hand, the club was like a mountain, unmoving no matter how hard Gobu Chong tried. "Boss, it's my turn." Seeing the panicked Gobu Chong, Li Ming grinned. With a swing of his hand holding the club, he easily broke free from Gobu Chong's grip, then swung it down again. The handle of the club struck Gobu Chong's face with a bang. Gobu Chong's entire face twisted, and his body flew out. He flew over 5 meters before rolling to the ground. The boss lost? The goblins watching were dumbfounded. The boss won. The goblin followers behind Li Ming jumped and cheered. "Gobu Ming, Gobu Ming." Gobu shouted excitedly. The other goblin followers also followed suit, shouting in unison. Amidst the chorus of shouts, the other goblins also joined in. For a moment, the forest echoed with the chants of Gobu Ming, Gobu Ming. Facing the goblins' reverent gazes, Li Ming grinned. Great, with this, the hunting party was now his. Of course, to avoid a simulated life ending, the process had to change. Li Ming raised the spiked club, and the shouts in the forest came to an abrupt halt. In the forest, Li Ming walked towards Gobu Chong with the club in hand. Seeing Li Ming approaching, Gobu Chong, who was struggling to get up, changed his expression. He retreated repeatedly, looking at the approaching Li Ming with a face full of fear. "Gobu Ming, you won. From now on, you're the boss." Li Ming approached Gobu Chong with a smile. "Do you submit?" Gobu Chong nodded vigorously. I submit." Li Ming nodded in satisfaction, grinning at Gobu Chong. This smile made Gobu Chong's heart tremble. "Here, it's yours." Li Ming handed the spiked club to Gobu Chong. Gobu Chong looked at the club in the boss's hand, then at the boss. A hint of hesitation flashed in Gobu Chong's eyes, but he finally forced a flattering smile. "Boss, let the club be my tribute to you." "I don't need this." Li Ming tossed the club to Gobu Chong. Gobu Chong hurriedly caught the club, holding it like a treasure. "From now on, you're still the boss, the leader of the hunting party, but you have to listen to me. Understand?" Although Gobu Chong didn't understand why Gobu Ming was doing something that goblins couldn't comprehend, he didn't think much about it and nodded. "The magic crystals, give them all to me." Gobu Chong quickly pulled a pouch made of animal hide from his waist. Li Ming weighed the pouch in his hand. It was quite heavy, indicating Gobu had collected quite a few magic crystals over time. But magic crystals were of little use to goblins. To goblins, magic crystals were just stones that could emit light. Boss, we should head back. We can't carry any more prey. Nearly 10 days of hunting had yielded a bountiful harvest for the hunting party. Although most of the prey were groundhogs, groundhog meat was the staple food for goblins. Without groundhog meat, the goblin nest couldn't support so many goblins. Let's head back. The cooldown for the simulated life was still half a month. In this half month, Li Ming planned to be an obedient, weak goblin. This world was too dangerous. The more you did, the more likely you were to die suddenly. Without the future predictions of the simulated life, it was simply too dangerous. Stop eating. Let's move. Return to the nest. Under Gobu's orders, the hunting party began their journey back. When they set out, there were 87 goblins in the hunting party. By the time they returned, only 64 remained. Boss, I seem to have grown taller and stronger. In the dim forest, a group of goblins was on the move. The long line stretched for hundreds of meters. Gobu came up to Li Ming, waving his fists excitedly. Li Ming glanced at him. With that glance, Li Ming noticed Gobu had leveled up. All his attributes had increased slightly. Li Ming looked at the other goblin followers. Those who had eaten the earth magic bear's meat had all leveled up. It seemed that goblins consuming high-tier magical beast meat could accelerate their evolution. This made Li Ming's expression change as he recalled the bodies in the trap. It's been so many days, the body should be gone by now. Groundhogs are known as scavengers in the forest. Though they usually eat plants, they won't pass up any meat they can find. What a pity. Such a large corpse could have fed all the goblins here. But Li Ming didn't dwell on it too much. There would be plenty of opportunities to hunt even stronger magical beasts in the future. As for himself, it seemed he had lost the ability to evolve because of the life simulation system. His strength came from the life simulation system. This body had already been twisted and enhanced by the power of the system. It wasn't surprising that he had lost some of the goblins' original abilities. Compared to the ability to evolve by devouring magical beasts, absorbing their skills was undoubtedly more powerful. The former had too low a ceiling, easily limited by one's innate talent. Most goblins, even if they devoured a dragon, would only become goblin warriors. Even if their bloodline was twisted and enhanced by a powerful foreign race, they wouldn't become much stronger. But the power of skills had no upper limit. You've grown a bit. What? Planning a rebellion? Li Ming glared angrily at Gobu. Daring to wave a fist in front of him was something he couldn't tolerate. Gobu shrank his neck, his face full of ingratiation. Boss, I wouldn't dare. You better not dare. In the following days, the hunting party traversed mountains and rivers, hunting as they advanced towards the goblin nest. On the third day, the hunting party returned to the goblin nest. Chief, this is my tribute to you. In the cave, Gobu bent over with a fawning expression. He glanced back at his underlings, giving them a signal. The goblins of the hunting party quickly carried groundhogs and placed wild boars on the ground in front of the giant rock. In no time, dozens of groundhog corpses and dismembered wild boar meat were piled into a small mountain. Seeing the mountain of food, the surrounding large goblins showed greedy expressions. Only those who evolved into goblin warriors could become the chief's personal guards. Goblin guards didn't need to go out hunting. They only needed to wait in the cave for the hunting party to offer tributes. Gobu on the stone platform waved his hand. Several goblin warriors jumped off the platform, carrying wild boar legs back up. Gobu took a big bite of a wild boar leg. Gobu, you're quite good. You have the right to mate. At that moment, a pained pig squeal echoed from the prison on the right rock wall. A goblin warrior was driving a forest sow over. Seeing the sow being driven over, Gobu face was full of excitement. His mouth slightly open, drool almost dripping out. Remember, this is an honor I bestow upon you. Gobu couldn't wait, pouncing excitedly. For a moment, the cave was filled with the squeals of sow. Watching Gobu live performance, Li Ming breathed a sigh of relief. Luckily, He was clever, and the future simulated by the system had changed. In less than 5 minutes, Gobu Chong was done. He looked intoxicated, staggering as he walked. Groundhog meat, pork, it's the same thing every day. I'm sick of it. Suddenly, Gobu Ba's disgruntled roar echoed in the cave. This startled Gobu Chong, making him jump. His body went limp, collapsing to the ground. On the stone platform, Gobu Ba angrily threw the pig leg in his hand. The pig leg flew dozens of meters, crashing into the rock wall. The surrounding goblins shivered in fear, involuntarily stepping back 2 paces. I want human meat. I want human meat. You, go catch me some humans. Gobu Ba raised his massive hand, pointing at Gobu Chong. Being pointed at by Gobu Ba, Gobu Chong shivered in fear. He quickly stood up, forcing a smile. Chief, the place where humans live is far from here. Going there and back will take at least. Gobu Chong started counting on his fingers, looking confused. Get out, bring back humans, or I'll eat you. Gobu Ba grinned, looking greedily at Gobu Chong. Gobu Chong was so scared that his body went stiff. I'll go. Realizing the situation, Gobu Chong scrambled out, rolling and crawling. The goblin underlings followed behind, faces full of panic. Li Meng was among them, his expression unusually serious. Could this be the future that happens after his death? Li Meng never expected there to actually be humans in this world. Ha ha ha! Watching the goblins flee in panic, Gobu Ba laughed heartily. Meanwhile, once outside the cave, Gobu Chong collapsed to the ground in fear. Gobu Chong, have you caught humans before? Looking up at Li Meng, who had approached, Gobu Chong quickly stood up. Gobu Chong nodded, gesturing animatedly as he spoke. Boss, human meat is delicious, tender and fragrant, slightly salty, extremely tasty. It's a pity the female humans are too fragile. They die after only a few breedings. Mating with humans is also the most pleasurable. Hee. At the end, Gobu Chong drooled. Remembering something, a trace of fear flashed in Gobu Chong's eyes. There are some really powerful humans. A few of them can wipe out our entire hunting party. Humans also like revenge. Many nests on the outskirts of the goblin forest have been wiped out by humans. Our group of goblins is said to have migrated from the outskirts too, back when the chief wasn't Gobu Ba. Boss, I'm scared we might die. Gobu Chong's body trembled. Though humans were delicious, they weren't easy prey. Gobu Chong understood this better than anyone. With just their small group, they might be eaten by magical beasts on the way to human territory. If you don't go, the chief will eat you. Gobu Chong's neck shrank, his face showing fear. The thought of becoming a piece of meat in the chief's mouth sent a shiver down his spine, his legs trembling. Let's rest for the night and set off tomorrow. It was the chief's order. They had to go. Li Meng understood this, and so did Gobu Chong. Otherwise, Gobu Chong would really be eaten. Thus, Gobu Chong accepted reality. Time passed quickly, and a day went by in no time. As night fell, the forest outside the nest quieted down. Early the next morning, Gobu Chong led the hunting party towards human territory. The hunting party crossed mountains and streams, traversing one valley after another, avoiding one powerful magical beast after another. Half a month later, on a certain high mountain, Boss, once we cross this mountain, we'll enter human territory. From a high vantage point, the view on the other side of the mountain was clear. The other side was still a series of mountains, but not as vast, high, or steep as the southern mountains. Boss, we have to be careful. Humans form teams to hunt in the goblin forest, and they're formidable. Form teams to hunt? Li Meng recalled some settings from Ice Sky novels. A world with goblins surely had adventurers. Where there are adventurers, there are bound to be mages, warriors, knights, thieves, and the like. Perhaps the humans Gobu Chong mentioned were those people. Let's rest for a while. Li Meng turned and sat on a large rock. Seeing this, the other goblin underlings quickly sprawled on the ground. System, start life simulation. The month-long cooldown was over, and he could finally simulate life again. Life simulation begins. After much effort, you become the leader of a hunting party. Following the leader's orders, You head to human territory to capture humans. You lead your team northward and successfully reach the edge of the Goblin Forest. Standing atop a mountain, you feel a bit lost about your future. A large river blocks your path, but you successfully build a raft and cross it. You discover a great wind rabbit. Please make a choice. 1. Hunt the great wind rabbit. 2. Detour to avoid the great wind rabbit. 3. Do nothing and scare the great wind rabbit away. Gobu Chong, have you ever seen a great wind rabbit? The sudden question from the leader made Gobu Chong's eyes light up. He quickly came over, showing a flattering expression. Boss, the great wind rabbit is an advanced form of the wind rabbit. It's a tier 2 magical beast, very large, and its meat is delicious. Although it's powerful, it's quite foolish and easily frightened, often crashing into trees to its death. An advanced form of the wind rabbit? Li Meng's eyes lit up as he pondered. The wind rabbit has magical skills, so the great wind rabbit must have even more powerful magic skills. Perhaps he could gain his first magical skill in life. Choose the third option. The great wind rabbit got scared and crashed into a tree to its death. You feasted on it and acquired the magical skill Windblade. You have become stronger, and your mindset has subtly changed. You enter a forest full of spiderwebs. Please make a choice. 1. Continue forward, ignoring everything. 2. You sense something is wrong and choose to detour. 3. You think spider-type magical beasts might appear, offering a chance to gain skills, so you choose to hunt unknown magical beasts. Which option should you choose? Sitting on a large rock, Li Meng appeared deep in thought. The first option is the most foolish. A forest full of spiderwebs seems off no matter how you look at it. If something feels wrong, how can you ignore it and continue on your way? Li Meng didn't believe he would be so careless. Between the second and third options, Li Meng leaned more towards the second, because the second option is the safest. The third option is a bit too risky. Facing unknown magical beasts, deciding to hunt them rashly is equally foolish. Choose the second option. You choose to detour, but a human adventurer team ambushes you, and you die. Your right ear is cut off and becomes a trophy for the human adventurer team. Gobu narrowly escapes and returns to take your body after the adventurers leave. You are eaten by Gobu, who successfully evolves into a big goblin. Your skull is preserved and receives daily nourishment from urine. As a transmigrator, you're cautious, but this doesn't change the fact that you're just a weakling. As a goblin, you are both hunter and prey. Your death holds no value in this world, won't be remembered by anyone, and only changes the fate of a weak goblin. Your death holds some value, but that's all. Life simulation ends. Score 30. Please choose a reward. 1. Consume 5 score points for level +1. 2. Consume 5 score points for attribute +5. 3. Consume 10 score points for steel muscles and iron bones, level +1. Choose the third option. Li Meng looked speechlessly at Gobu, who was gnawing on a piece of meat. Does this guy have some kind of obsession with his skull? Why is he always thinking about his skull? Is the skull being drenched in urine some kind of goblin ritual? Steel muscles and iron bones, level +3. A familiar sensation surged through his body again. Li Meng felt as if his entire body was dislocated, crackling, and popping. The intense pain from all over his body made Li Meng gasp. The muscles under his skin visibly squirmed and swelled. After a while, the abnormality in his body gradually subsided. Li Meng quickly opened his character panel to take a look. Name, Gobu Meng. Race, Goblin. Level, 8. Strength, 112. Defense, 93. Agility, 31. Magic, 5. Charm, 0. Luck, 11. Devour. Devouring the flesh of magical beasts may grant you their skills. Steel muscles and iron bones. LV4, strength +80. Defense +80. Agility +20. Strength and defense attributes are high, but the other attributes are somewhat lacking. Li Meng remembered Gobu Ba's attributes. As the Goblin Chief, Gobu Ba only had a high strength attribute, with other attributes being more balanced. Of course, the magic attribute is not included in this. Boss, you're about to evolve, right? Gobu looked at the boss with fear. Just now, the boss's body was twisting and squirming like a monster. Although he didn't know what happened, he knew the boss had become stronger. Yeah, almost. Li Ming gladly accepted the fact that he had become stronger again. He wasn't strong enough yet. He needed to become even stronger. He was strong now, but also weak. Without the life simulation predicting the future, he wouldn't know how many times he had died. Getting up, Li Ming dusted off the dirt from his animal hide. Let's go. The goblins who had just climbed the mountain descended again. This time, the information provided by the life simulation was somewhat lacking. It didn't specify which direction to go after descending the mountain. It didn't detail how to proceed after descending. Li Ming didn't dwell on this point. No matter how he chose, it was probably within the life simulation's predictions. 5 hours later, a large river indeed blocked the team's path. Looking at the river before him, Li Ming stood on the riverbank, feeling lost. Goblins can swim, and Li Ming had previously wondered why they didn't just swim across. Now Li Ming understood why he needed to build a raft across. Because the river was extremely turbulent, with an astonishing flow rate, it was truly a raging torrent. The river was over 600 meters wide. Swimming to the middle would likely leave one exhausted. Boss, let's look downstream for a place to cross. The sight of nature's might filled Gobu with fear. Crossing here would surely mean death. Go cut wood and make a raft. If they went downstream to find a crossing, wouldn't they miss the great wind rabbit? Li Ming didn't plan to change his future here. Boss, what's a raft? Gobu looked at the boss in confusion. Li Ming then realized he had overestimated the goblins. However, goblins indeed had no need for raft technology. Goblins were good swimmers, and those living in the forest didn't need rafts. Go cut. The words stopped abruptly. Li Ming abandoned the idea of having the goblin underlings cut trees. Cutting trees wasn't an easy task. With the weapons in the hands of the goblin underlings, they couldn't cut down trees. Go collect some deadwood. The more and bigger, the better. Collecting deadwood was much easier than cutting live trees. Although they didn't know what the boss wanted to do, they had to listen to him. Gobu turned and pointed at a group of goblin underlings. You guys go find some deadwood and bring it back. The goblin underlings looked at each other, then turned and ran into the depths of the forest. The rest of you, use bark to make ropes. Bark ropes were something goblins commonly used. What are you standing around for? Hurry up and get moving. Under Gobu scolding, the goblin underlings shivered. They turned and dashed into the depths of the forest. In the following time, the goblins busied themselves on the shore. From time to time, goblins would drag various sizes of deadwood out of the forest. Soon, a large pile of deadwood appeared on the shore. Strange, how could goblins be ambushed by a human adventurer team? Standing on the riverbank, Li Ming gazed at the turbulent river, lost in thought. The simulation's explanation about human adventurers caught Li Ming's attention. The reason goblins could survive in a forest teeming with magical beasts was their keen sense of smell. Even when upwind, they could determine if an area was safe by the lingering scent of magical beasts. It was practically impossible for humans to ambush goblins. Goblins could sense humans from afar. It seems I need to change my route. He couldn't follow the future path predicted by the simulation. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. Boss, is this enough? Gobu approached with a fawning expression. Li Ming turned to look at the pile of deadwood on the riverbank. Not enough. Keep collecting. There were over 60 goblins, so the raft had to be large. The river was too rapid, so the raft couldn't be made too small. Li Ming walked toward the pile of deadwood. You use the bark ropes to tie these pieces of deadwood together, one after another, without overlapping. On the shore, Li Ming began directing the goblin underlings to build the raft. You need to tie it like this to make it sturdy, got it? Idiot, not like that, like this. Come here, I'll show you again. The slow-witted goblins were very slow at learning new things. This made Li Ming feel quite exhausted. Fortunately, Li Ming was a patient person. Under Li Ming's repeated guidance, the goblins finally learned how to tie the deadwood. Time passed bit by bit, and as the sun set, the day came to an end. On the riverbank, a raft had begun to take shape. The long night quietly passed as the goblins snored away. Early the next morning, under Li Meng's urging, the goblin underlings continued their work. By the afternoon, the raft was finally completed. Great, is everyone here? Looking at the raft, about 30 meters long, Li Meng nodded in satisfaction. Although it looked a bit ugly, that didn't matter. Li Meng had only one requirement for the raft, that it floated. Gobu glanced at the goblin underlings. Boss, everyone's here. Then let's start crossing the river. Li Meng stepped onto the raft. Come on, split up to the sides and push the raft into the river. To make it easier to push the heavy raft into the water, Li Meng had chosen a gentle slope when building the raft. The goblin underlings quickly split to the sides and grabbed the pole ropes. Pull hard. At Li Meng's command, the goblin underlings exerted their strength. The heavy raft trembled slightly and began to move slowly. Faster and faster. All right, everyone get on quickly. Seeing the raft sliding into the water, Li Meng hurriedly urged the goblin underlings. The goblin underlings jumped onto the raft in a bit of a panic. Fortunately, the process was smooth and all the goblin underlings made it onto the raft. With a splash, water sprayed everywhere. The raft successfully plunged into the river. The rushing river water propelled the raft downstream. Li Meng quickly picked up a pole as thick as an arm and thrust it into the water at the front of the raft. The river was deep, reaching 5 meters to the riverbed. In the turbulent river, Li Meng struggled to steer the raft toward the opposite bank. Drifting several kilometers along the river, the raft finally reached the opposite bank. Into the water. At a calmer section of the river, Li Meng shouted. He dropped the pole and jumped into the river. The goblin underlings quickly grabbed the pole ropes and entered the water. The large raft was slowly pulled onto the shore bit by bit. It wasn't until half of the raft was on the shore and couldn't be pulled any further that they stopped. Tie it securely. We'll need it on the way back. Not trusting anyone else, Li Meng personally tied a bark rope to a large tree on the riverbank. Boss, you're so smart. Gobu had never thought of crossing the river this way. It was much easier than swimming. Let's go move out. The goblin hunting party quickly went ashore and entered the forest. Unknowingly, the group had entered a valley. Boss, I smell something unpleasant. It's lizard men. As they walked, Gobu suddenly made a new discovery. At the front, Gobu sniffed the air. At this point, the group had only ventured less than 3 kilometers into the forest. Li Meng also caught a faint scent of decay. Are lizard men strong? Gobu looked around warily and nodded. Very strong. They like to live in swamps, and any creature entering the swamp will be killed by them. Sometimes they leave the swamp to hunt magical beasts. Many hunting parties have encountered them. Although they don't like goblin meat, they'll kill goblins on sight. The simulation's predicted future didn't include encountering lizard men. This indicated they wouldn't run into lizard men. Let's go around them. The rotten smell came from the left front. That direction should be the swamp area connected to the river. The goblin team in the forest changed direction and headed northwest. Boss, it's a great wind rabbit. After walking a bit further, Gobu ran over to Li Meng with a delighted expression. Boss, great wind rabbits are delicious. Let's catch it. Gobu looked at the boss expectantly, drooling. Great wind rabbit? Li Meng's expression changed slightly, his eyes brightening. He had been waiting for a great wind rabbit. He hadn't expected to encounter one so soon. Li Meng nodded toward Gobu. Gobu grinned, drool dripping from the corner of his mouth. Hunt, great wind rabbit, great wind rabbit. Though his words were disjointed, they made the goblin underlings' eyes light up. All the goblins slowed their pace and spread out to the sides. They had already caught the scent of the great wind rabbit. In the dim forest, dozens of goblins cautiously moved in a fan shape. Boss, that's the great wind rabbit. Li Meng and Gobu crawled into a thicket. On the other side of the bushes, deep in the forest, there was a sunlit area. Golden sunlight shone down, illuminating that space in the woods. In that bright spot, a giant white rabbit was basking in the sun. Its size was enormous. Just lying there, its shoulder height exceeded 2 meters. Great wind rabbit. Level. 17, strength 19, defense 17, agility 27, magic 21, windblade, LV 2. The attributes were average, but its magic was high. A goblin stealthily crept into the forest behind the great wind rabbit. Huh! It suddenly leaped out with a loud shout. The great wind rabbit was startled, jumping up in fright. The space in front of it twisted. In the next instant, an almost invisible wind blade shot out. Shoo! A large tree 20 meters away was suddenly split in two, crashing to the ground with a rumble. The great wind rabbit, startled, darted around the forest like a headless fly. Huh! In front of the panicked rabbit, a goblin suddenly emerged from the bushes. This startled the great wind rabbit again. Its massive body leapt up in fright and fled in another direction. A large tree blocked its path, and it crashed straight into it. Boom! With a loud boom, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. The great wind rabbit's massive body fell to the ground, twitching. In no time, it was motionless. Seeing this, Li Meng was speechless. He never expected the idiom, wait for a chance, to become a reality in this other world. There really was a creature dumb enough to crash itself to death. Great wind rabbit, great wind rabbit. As soon as the rabbit died, the goblins rushed out from their hiding places. They shouted excitedly, drooling over the great wind rabbit. What a sharp cut! Is this the power of magic? Looking at the smooth cut on the tree stump, Li Meng clicked his tongue in amazement. A tree that required 2 people to hug was cut down just like that. And the tree behind it even had a half-meter deep gash. The power of the wind blade was truly terrifying. Move aside. Gobu approached the great wind rabbit's corpse. With a shout, the surrounding goblin minions scattered in fear. Gobu raised his sharp claws and began tearing at the rabbit's belly. Soon, a strong scent of blood filled the air. Smelling the sweet scent of blood, the goblin minions looked intoxicated. Drool dripped from their mouths, their eyes filled with greed. Gobu struggled to extract a heart larger than his head. Holding the heart, Gobu ran towards the boss with a fawning expression. Boss, this is your favorite heart. Over the days, Gobu had figured out the boss's preferences. The boss loved eating the hearts of prey. Li Meng took the heart from Gobu and took a big bite. The warm flesh and blood slid down his throat, making Li Meng's eyes narrow slightly. The heart was indeed delicious, perfectly suiting his current taste. Boss, I'm going to eat the meat now. Li Meng waved his hand. Gobu quickly turned and ran greedily towards the great wind rabbit's corpse. He leaped into the rabbit's belly, devouring the tastiest organs. After a while, Gobu finally ate his fill and left contentedly. With Gobu gone, the goblins who had been waiting impatiently pounced. Dozens of goblins fought over the food, and the massive great wind rabbit's body was devoured at a speed visible to the naked eye. Acquired skill, Windblade. The system's notification made Li Meng grin. The skill he had longed for was finally in his grasp. Glancing sideways, Li Meng looked at the nearby tree stump. Windblade. The space in front of Li Meng suddenly twisted. A gust of air exploded, and a visible transparent wind blade shot out. Chill. Wood chips flew from the tree stump more than 10 meters away. A half-meter deep gash appeared on the stump. Li Meng's face turned pale, and the dizziness in his head made him collapse to the ground. Could it be because my magic attribute is too low? Struggling to sit up, Li Meng rubbed his dizzy head. He thought of his pitifully low magic attribute. The magic attribute must be closely related to magical skills. Perhaps the side effects of using magic were due to his insufficient magic power. Boss, are you okay? Gobu's voice suddenly sounded from behind, startling Li Meng. Li Meng stood up and glared back at him. Gobu shrank his neck, retreating 2 steps in fear. Are you full? Gobu quickly nodded. He patted his bulging belly and wiped his mouth. Shaking his slightly dizzy head again, Li Meng swayed his head. It seemed that next time he would have to choose magic power for his reward. Without improving his magic attribute, the Windblade would be a useless skill. The commotion in the forest lasted less than half an hour. Half an hour later, only a bloodstain remained where the great wind rabbit's body had been. "Let's move, go," urged by Gobu Chong. The hunting party continued onward. 3 hours later, in another part of the forest was dark and somewhat damp. The ground was covered with a thick layer of fallen leaves. Due to the water beneath the leaves, stepping on them felt soft. Walking through the forest, Li Ming looked around. This forest seemed denser than the previous one. Looking up, the dense foliage overlapped, blocking out any sunlight. The air was filled with a rotten smell. "Boss, this is the territory of the ghost spiders. We need to leave." Gobu Chong suddenly noticed something, running towards Li Ming in panic. "Ghost spiders? Are they strong?" Gobu Chong nodded vigorously. "Ghost spiders are second-tier magical beasts, and there are many of them." Li Ming looked towards the depths of the forest. "Tell them to stop." Gobu Chong quickly turned to halt the goblin minions. The goblins in the forest looked at each other, unsure why the boss wanted them to stop. Meanwhile, Li Ming approached a spider web. The web was large, connecting 2 trees. Judging by its color, it seemed to be an abandoned web of the ghost spiders, covered in dust. Li Ming touched the web with his hand. The web suddenly trembled and emitted a buzzing sound. The webs in the treetops also trembled, producing the same sound. The buzzing sound quickly spread into the depths of the forest. His expression changed slightly, and Li Ming quickly tore off a piece of the web. "Run!" Leaving those words behind, Li Ming sprinted back the way he came. The other goblins didn't know what had happened, but since the boss ran, they naturally followed suit. Li Ming wasn't a fool. He knew exactly what was going on. His action of touching the spider web must have alarmed the ghost spiders deep in the forest. In the dim forest, dozens of goblins were sprinting wildly. They only stopped after running several kilometers. In the dim forest, Li Ming leaned against a big tree, panting heavily. Looking down at the spider web in his hand, Li Ming's face showed a look of curiosity. It was a bit sticky, but incredibly tough. Glancing around, Li Ming walked toward a nearby puddle. Kneeling by the puddle, Li Ming submerged the spider web in the water. He scrubbed the spider web vigorously. Soon, the stickiness of the web was washed away. The once large mass of spider web turned into a bundle of transparent threads. Li Ming straightened the threads, holding each end with his hands, and pulled hard. The threads stretched a bit, but did not break. What a treasure! The elasticity and toughness of the threads made Li Ming's eyes light up. The spider web of the ghost spiders was simply the perfect material for making bowstrings. With the bowstring, Li Ming had no problem using his knowledge to craft a simple crossbow. If the goblins had crossbows as weapons, their combat power would definitely increase significantly. "Boss, what are you doing?" Gobu Chong approached curiously. "You'll find out soon enough." This small spider silk was the key to conquering this world. He would use his earthly knowledge to bring the goblins into the Iron Age. Vala! At that moment, a sudden change erupted in the forest. With a loud roar, a group of strong, tall figures charged out. They rushed at the resting goblins, swinging large machetes at them. The resting goblins were decapitated before they could react. The sudden attack frightened the goblins immensely. "It's the lizard men! It's the lizard men!" Facing the nearly 2-meter-tall lizard men covered in black scales, the goblins panicked and scattered. The goblins tried to flee, but the lizard men were faster. Their rusty machetes cut down one goblin after another. Some goblins tried to resist, but the gap in combat power was too great. Their sticks were shattered, and the machetes nearly cleaved their bodies in half. A single kick from a lizard man could send a goblin flying over 10 meters. There were only a dozen lizard men, yet they chased and slaughtered the goblins in the forest. The sudden attack startled Li Ming and Gobu Chong. A lizard man set its sights on the two of them. Its golden pupils locked onto them as it charged with a machete in hand. Lizard man, level 22, strength 37, defense 31, agility 33, magic 5. Li Ming glanced at the lizard men in the forest. He noticed that none of them were below level 20. They were all between levels 20 and 30. I'm not afraid of you. Li Meng snatched the spiked club from Gobu Chong, who was ready to fight, and charged forward. Seeing the small goblin daring to confront it, the lizard man flashed a mocking smile. It grinned, leaped up, and swung its machete at Li Meng. Li Meng didn't dodge, swinging the spiked club to meet the attack. Boom! The weapons clashed with a loud boom. The lizard man felt a massive force transmitted through its machete. Its wrist went numb, and the machete flew out of its hand. Die! Li Meng grinned at the incredulous lizard man. With his left hand, he struck the lizardman's heart. Sure, the lizardman's heart was pierced through. The seemingly heavy lizard man was lifted high by the small Li Meng. Li Meng flung it aside, discarding the lizard man. In his hand was a still beating heart. Li Meng took a greedy bite of the warm heart in his hand. Ah, the heart of an intelligent creature is indeed delicious. Li Meng looked satisfied, his blood-stained mouth grinning savagely. A nearby lizard man noticed the situation and charged over, shouting, "What's it saying? I don't understand." Li Meng tossed the heart aside and hurled the spiked club with force. The club spun through the air, flying dozens of meters to hit the lizardman's head accurately. With a boom, the lizard man was sent flying. The spiked club was also knocked away. The fallen lizard man convulsed on the ground. Its head was twisted beyond recognition, and blood poured from its mouth and nose. Li Meng ran towards a nearby machete. Picking it up, he charged at the lizard men. "Kill them, Gobu Meng, Gobu Meng." Seeing the boss instantly slay 2 lizard men, Gobu Chong was excited. He roared and shouted. The fleeing goblins, seeing their boss's bravery, were invigorated. "Gobu Meng, Gobu Meng." The goblins stopped running and charged at the lizard man with excitement. "What are you looking at?" Li Meng swiftly closed in on a lizard man. With a rusty machete in hand, he swung it wide at the lizard man. The lizard man reacted quickly, blocking with its machete. Clang! A metallic clash rang out, sparks flying. The immense force made the lizardman's face change, sliding back several meters to dissipate the force. After the block, Li Meng pressed forward, slashing down. This time, the lizard man wasn't so lucky. Li Meng twisted his body, and the machete sliced through the lizardman's chest. The tall lizard man was split in two, its upper body flying away. Blood splattered everywhere, the pungent smell making Li Meng's whole body restless. "Kill, kill, kill!" Li Meng, eyes red, charged at the lizard man like a beast. No technique, just brute force slashing. One lizard man after another was cut down by Li Meng. Only then did the lizard men notice the anomaly that was Li Meng. But they couldn't care about anything else, because the goblins, with their morale high, surrounded them from all sides. Though strong, the lizard men couldn't fight off so many. Some lizard men were already cut down by the goblins, beaten to death. La la la. Seeing the unfavorable situation, a lizard man suddenly screamed. The remaining 5 lizard men quickly turned and fled deeper into the forest. The retreat of the lizard men boosted the goblins' morale. They shouted and chased after them. "Come back!" Li Meng's loud shout stopped the goblin underlings from pursuing. The shout intimidated the frenzied goblin underlings. All the goblin underlings were too scared to move. "Eat them all!" Hearing the boss's words, the goblins' eyes lit up. They eagerly rushed to the nearest corpses to feast. For a while, the dim forest echoed with the sounds of chewing. First, the lizardmen's bodies, then their own kind's bodies. As the goblin underlings were enjoying their feast, Li Meng returned to the puddle to wash the blood off his body. He glanced at the large machete lying on the ground beside him, a look of curiosity on his face. The machete wasn't made of metal. Its main body was wood, with a sharp stone blade embedded in it. The stone blade was smeared with some decaying mud, making it look like rust. There were polishing marks on the stone blade, making it very smooth. This stone weapon was much better than the clubs the goblins wielded. Li Meng's gaze shifted slightly to the water, which had turned red. The first battle had left him trembling all over. Though it was dangerous, the rush of adrenaline was intoxicating. The smell of blood ignited a fire within him. Even though he had human consciousness, His mindset was gradually becoming more like a goblin's. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing. A human mindset wouldn't survive in this world. Boss, we're done eating. They'll come back. We need to leave. Gobu ran over, looking at the boss by the puddle with admiration. The boss was still an ordinary goblin, yet so powerful it was suffocating. Even the mighty lizard men became weak trash in front of the boss. Meng carefully placed the spider silk into the cloth bag at his waist. Let's go, back to the riverbank. The future predicted by the simulated life had already changed. From this moment on, the future was uncertain. Meng didn't plan to use the remaining simulated life immediately. At least the journey back to the riverbank should be safe. Move out, get going. Under Gobu urging, the well-fed goblins got up with their bellies full. The battle with the lizard men had cost the hunting party dearly. In less than 5 minutes of fighting, over 30 goblins were killed. The entire hunting party was reduced to less than 30 goblins. Gobu, are you dead or alive? Walking through the dim forest, Meng suddenly shouted. A goblin ahead of him jumped in shock and ran over to Meng with a fawning expression. Boss, I'm still alive. Meng looked Gobu up and down. The goblin had grown stronger, its body larger. Its level had risen to 8, not far from evolving into a big goblin. After eating the lizard man corpse, the other goblins were also rapidly growing. Follow me. Gobu grinned and happily followed behind Meng. Staying by the boss's side was much safer than being at the front. Boss, if we go back like this, I'll be eaten by the leader. Gobu approached Meng with a dejected look. It was full of unease and fear. Meng glanced at the few remaining goblin underlings. The goblins were just too weak. Over 60 goblins were cut down in an instant by a dozen lizard men. Gobu, why didn't we detect the lizard men's presence in advance? The lizard men had suddenly charged out of the forest. This meant they had used some method to mask their scent and sneak up on them. Boss, the lizard men smeared some decaying mud on themselves, which emitted a swampy smell. Meng nodded in understanding. So that's how it was. The lizard men indeed had some black mud on them. It seemed the lizard men knew goblins had keen senses of smell, making it difficult to approach unnoticed. That's why they used decaying mud to mask their scent. Before long, the sky gradually darkened. To avoid the danger of the lizard men, Meng led the remaining goblins back to the riverbank overnight. That night, the forest beside the darkness was silent. Silver moonlight spread across the land, slightly dispelling the darkness. Suddenly, there was some movement in the forest by the riverbank. A group of shadows darted out of the forest and stopped by the riverbank. In the moonlight, the shadows were a group of ugly, green-skinned creatures. System, start the simulated life. For the sake of his own life, Meng used the second simulated life of the month. In the moonlight, Meng stood by the roaring river. Start simulated life. That night, you brought the goblin underlings to the riverbank, gazing at the shimmering water, contemplating your future life. Before dawn, you plan to do something. Please make the following choice. 1. You decide to cross the river overnight to avoid the lizard men threat and return to the lair. 2. You know returning to the lair will get you eaten by the angry Gobu, so you decide to go downstream to the human territory. 3. Do nothing, rest by the riverbank for a night, and become a wandering goblin. Again, 3 options, 3 choices for future lives. The first option was reasonable. Staying by the riverbank was dangerous. The lizard men might be pursuing them. The hunting party suffered heavy losses, so returning to the lair was the most reasonable choice. But a reasonable choice wasn't necessarily the right one. Returning to the lair like this, Gobu would die, and these goblins might also get implicated. The second option was more of a compromise. As long as they captured a few humans and brought them back, the crisis would be over. Although the hunting party suffered heavy losses, they could still secretly capture a few ordinary human civilians. However, the second option was also the most dangerous. It was entirely a gamble, and they might not survive. The third option, becoming a wandering goblin, was also a good choice. As long as there was enough food, the existing goblins could independently develop a new tribe. Gobu, should we go downstream to the human territory, cross the river back to the lair, or wander outside to avoid becoming food? Choose one. In the end, Li Ming decided to leave the choice to Gobu. After all, these goblins might not necessarily die if they returned. But Gobu was different. If it went back, it would definitely be eaten by the angry Gobu Ba. Gobu ugly face twisted into a knot. The boss was letting it choose, which made it very difficult. It didn't know what to choose. If it chose to wander, would the boss abandon it? Boss, I don't want to die. I can't go back. This was Gobu answer, and also its choice. Very well. Then let's wander outside and establish a new lair. Gobu choice was also what Li Ming wanted. Going to the human territory was too dangerous. Wandering outside allowed for more freedom to grow stronger. There were too many variables in returning to the lair. Moreover, the day-to-day life of hunting for food wasn't what Li Ming wanted. System, the third option. You choose to wander outside, and a new goblin lair appears in the forest on the north bank. You lead the goblin underlings upstream along the river. You choose a dense forest as your new home, and a new species of forest goblin emerges. To strengthen the tribe, you led the goblin underlings to capture female creatures on a large scale. You discovered an ogre and trapped it using a snare. Under your whipping and torment, the ogre submitted. You found an open-air iron mine beneath a barren mountain. You attempted to make charcoal and succeeded. You tried to construct a blast furnace and, after multiple failures, succeeded. You successfully crafted your first crossbow and bolt in your life. You discovered traces of the pigmen tribe. Please make the following choice. 1. Follow the traces to find the pigmen tribe. 2. Do nothing, as you think this is unimportant. 3. You sense a crisis and prepare for war, arming the goblins. Among the three options, the third one is clearly more reasonable and conservative. Choose the third option. You decided to prepare for war urgently, making more charcoal kilns and iron furnaces. The thick smoke in the forest caught the attention of the lizard men, who launched a massive attack. You wanted to flee, but your display of strength led the lizard men to surround you, and you died. The short-lived goblin forest tribe was annihilated, disappearing into history. Gobu managed to escape, stealing your corpse and consuming you. Your skull became Gobu Da's collectible, daily soaked in urine, serving as the only proof of your existence. Your charcoal kiln and furnace caught the attention of the lizard men, but they didn't care. A group of pigmen discovered the charcoal kiln and iron furnace, sparking their curiosity. Many years later, the pigmen tribe rose, giving birth to the legendary Golden Pigman King. As a transmigrator, you left behind some things that triggered wars in this world with your knowledge. Your death was not in vain. At least you changed the fate of a certain race. Simulated life ended. Score 50. Please choose the following rewards. 1. Consume 5 points plus 1 level. 2. Consume 5 points plus 5 attributes. 3. Consume 30 points plus 1 charm. This time, the rewards left Li Ming somewhat disappointed. Skill level rewards are what he needs most. Choose option 2. Add to magic power. Your magic power value has increased. If there's any feeling, it's that there's none at all. Let's go. We need to stay away from the swamp and head upstream. Although Li Ming wanted to beat up Gobu, he ultimately gave up. Li Ming had to admit that Gobu was indeed very lucky. Except for dying in the first simulated life, in the other simulations, he was the last survivor. That night, the goblins who stayed on the riverbank returned to the forest. Before long, the riverbank returned to tranquility. Only the rushing river water made a splashing sound. In the following days, Li Ming led the goblin underlings upstream along the river. The terrain of the goblin forest is not a flat forest. Instead, it's a landscape of intersecting mountains and valleys. Among the mountains, there are various small plains. On the morning of the third day, in a forest by the riverbank. Boss, I see it. I see the bare mountain. Gobu climbed up a big tree, gazing into the distance. About 10 miles away, on one side of the valley, stood a bare mountain. Gobu swiftly slid down from the tree. How far is it? Li Ming asked Gobu, who had come down from the tree. From the future of the simulated life, many useful key pieces of information can be found. The barren mountain and the iron mine are the most important. If the iron mine can be discovered first, there will be more time for development. It's just ahead. We'll be there soon. Let's go. Keep moving forward. After a brief rest in the forest, the goblins continued onward. About an hour later, Li Ming stopped in a forest. Seeing the boss suddenly stop, the other goblins looked at each other. They had no choice but to stop, cautiously surveying their surroundings. Li Ming looked down at the ground, stepping on it. The terrain of this forest is very flat. Unlike some places where rocks are scattered, the ground is also very dry, indicating that this area is higher than the river. Unlike some places that show signs of being flooded, this suggests that at some point, the river water will flood, submerging the forest. Gobu, this will be our lair. Take 10 goblins and go hunting. Remember to catch more female groundhogs. This is the lair? Gobu glanced around the forest with some doubt. How could this place possibly become a lair? Although puzzled, Gobu didn't think much of it. Now, Gobu is the boss, and the boss has the final say. You come with me. Gobu selected 10 strong goblins and went hunting in the forest. Meanwhile, Li Ming also began to get busy. The rest of you climb the trees and strip the branches, leaving only the canopy. Under Li Ming's command, the remaining goblins climbed the trees. The lizardmen's machetes were still very useful. Although the goblins found them a bit cumbersome to use, they were still usable. For a while, the sound of chopping trees echoed through the forest. While the goblin underlings were busy, Li Ming wandered around the forest. The most important thing now is to increase the tribe's population. The animal pen and breeding room must be prioritized for construction. The animal pen is used to imprison female creatures, while the breeding room is for caring for pregnant females. A goblin without females can't become the protagonist, right? Thinking about this goblin flaw gave Li Ming a headache. How could a goblin, which relies on other female creatures to reproduce, possibly become the protagonist of this world? Li Ming always understood this reality. But as a goblin, he could only rely on this species to survive in this world. No matter how disgusting the task, he had to do it. Shaking his head, Li Ming dismissed the thoughts from his mind. Let's choose here. The terrain here is relatively flat, and the ground is very dry. In the following time, under Li Ming's direction, the goblins worked hard, sweating profusely. As the branches of a large tree were stripped away, the space beneath the tree became much more open. Under Li Ming's guidance, the goblins stripped suitable branches into wooden strips that could serve as fences. Boss, I'm back. In the afternoon, Gobu returned. The goblin underlings were carrying 3 tightly bound female groundhogs. Li Ming examined the appearance of the 3 female groundhogs. They were all quite large, suitable for breeding. Put them in the animal pen. The animal pen had already been constructed, though it wasn't very large. Not far behind Li Ming, in the forest, was a visible animal pen enclosed by wooden fences. Gobu quickly instructed the underlings to carry the female groundhogs over. Once inside the animal pen, the unbound female groundhogs scurried around wildly. Fortunately, the groundhogs didn't dig holes. Otherwise, the animal pen wouldn't be able to contain them. Gobu, you've done well. You have earned the right to reproduce. Go ahead. In this place, Gobu was the only big goblin. The higher the evolution level of a goblin, the faster its offspring grow. To rapidly increase the population, Gobu genes were indispensable. Gobu face lit up with joy. He looked at the female groundhogs in the animal pen, drooling. Boss, I'm going. With a strange cry, Gobu eagerly rushed towards the animal pen. The other goblin minions watched Gobu head towards the pen with envy. Li Ming grinned and turned away leisurely. Though it was a bit hard to watch, Li Ming had gotten used to it. After all, he wasn't entirely a goblin. Goblins were humanoid, after all. For him to accept it, the counterpart would have to be a humanoid female creature. Everyone, follow me. While Gobu Chong was busy reproducing, Li Meng led the goblin minions to start building the breeding room. Compared to the animal pen, the breeding room needed to be relatively more comfortable. The forest winds were cold, and without a more enclosed environment, it was easy to freeze to death. Due to a lack of manpower, it took 5 days to build the breeding room. On the 5th day, a large wooden hut appeared in the forest. The hut was made by stacking and binding branches of various sizes. A large tree served as the main load-bearing structure. It looked like a giant barrel. The roof and outer walls were covered with dry leaves to increase insulation. Finally, it's done. Looking at the somewhat crude breeding room, Li Meng nodded in satisfaction. Considering it was his first time building a wooden hut, this was quite an achievement. Though it was small, it was enough for now. More could be added as needed in the future. Moreover, with some modifications, this wooden hut could become a cozy home for the goblins. Boss. At that moment, Gobu Chong ran over. What is you so excited? Seeing Gobu Chong's face full of excitement, Li Meng curiously asked. Gobu Chong chuckled, puffing out his chest proudly. Boss, it seems all 3 female groundhogs are pregnant. Li Meng's eyes lit up with interest. Let's go take a look. Li Meng and Gobu Chong then headed to the animal pen. Moments later, they arrived outside the pen. Li Meng curiously observed the female groundhogs munching on leaves inside the pen. There were quite a few, at least a dozen. Groundhog, level 4, strength 4, defense 2, agility 3, magic 0, status pregnant. Among them, the bellies of 3 female groundhogs were noticeably larger. It had only been 5 days, yet their bellies were already so prominent. If these 3 litters were born successfully, they could easily add over 30 goblins. Take those 3 pregnant female groundhogs to the breeding room for proper care. Gobu Chong nodded and gestured to the minions behind him. More than a dozen goblins climbed over the pen walls and grabbed the female groundhogs by their ears. The groundhogs squealed and struggled as they were pulled out of the pen. Also, take this one, and this one to the breeding room. Pregnant groundhogs exhibited abnormal states. The goblins grabbed 4 more female groundhogs by their ears and left the pen. Gobu Chong, is there enough food around here? The biggest factor affecting the goblin population was food. With sufficient food supply, the goblin population could explode to tens of thousands in just a few years. Gobu Chong nodded. Boss, there are many groundhog burrows, and their scent is strong. Groundhogs were the most common magical beasts in the forest. In the natural world, their status was similar to that of mice on Earth. But relying on groundhogs alone for enough food was unrealistic. As the tribe's population grew, so would the demand for food. To obtain enough food, they would have to expand their hunting grounds. And expanding the hunting grounds would inevitably lead to encounters with other tribes living in the goblin forest. The ultimate result would be war. In the depths of the goblin forest, battles between goblin nests were the most common. Many goblin nests took advantage of these battles to reduce their population. This way, the population and hunting grounds could reach a perfect balance. Although food wasn't a concern now, it would eventually become the biggest challenge for the tribe's development. Boss. At that moment, Gobu came running over excitedly. He looked at the female groundhogs in the pen with greedy eyes. Standing before Li Meng, Gobu patted his chest. Boss, I've evolved into a big goblin. Li Meng looked Gobu up and down. Name, Gobu. Species, big goblin. Level 10. Strength, 14. Defense, 15. Agility, 17. Magic, 3. Not only had his attributes doubled, but his physique had also become more robust. He had grown to 1.7 meters tall, looking quite powerful. Gobu's eyes were fixed on the female groundhogs in the pen, drooling. Seeing Gobu's eager expression, Li Meng chuckled. Reproduction was a natural instinct for goblins. Go ahead. Li Meng patted Gobu's shoulder, granting him the right to mate. Great! With a cheer, Gobu eagerly leaped into the animal pen. Li Meng glanced at Gobu, who was excitedly harassing the groundhogs, and smiled wryly before turning away. The tribe couldn't rely solely on Gobu Chang's offspring. Otherwise, he, as the boss, would eventually be overthrown by his minions. The only solution was to reproduce his own offspring within the tribe. Li Meng didn't mind having his own offspring. What he minded was the mating partner. Even if the partner wasn't human, it had to be a humanoid creature. Beside the animal pen, Gobu Chang looked at Gobuda, who was grunting and venting his desires with disdain. If he had known this guy could evolve into a big goblin, he would have eaten him long ago. Oof. I'll eat you sooner or later. A flash of malice crossed his eyes as Gobu Chang turned and left. Gobu seemed to sense Gobu Chang's murderous intent. He looked puzzled at Gobu Chang's departing figure, but he was quickly pulled back by his desires, focusing on reproducing. The next morning, Li Meng started another busy day. The goblin minions were divided into 3 groups. One group went out hunting. Another group stayed in the tribe to build nest huts. The last group followed him, the boss, to the northern Barren Mountains. In the northern forest of the tribe, 7 goblins walked cautiously. As they walked, they sniffed the air. Their keen sense of smell allowed them to distinguish various scents. Suddenly, one of the goblins stopped. Its sudden halt caught the attention of the other goblins. They all turned their gaze and stopped in their tracks. Li Meng crouched down and lifted a stone from the underbrush. Indeed, it's iron ore. The stone was gray-black, indicating a high iron content. Li Meng glanced around the ground with a slight tilt of his head. He noticed many similar stones in the nearby forest, and this place was at least a mile away from the Bear Mountain. Li Meng tossed the stone aside and got up to continue walking forward. He had found iron ore, but now he needed to figure out how to hide the smoke. Smelting iron required burning charcoal, which would produce a lot of smoke. The appearance of smoke would attract the attention of other intelligent races nearby. In the future information predicted by the simulated life, it was certain that there were lizardmen and pigmen tribes nearby. Attracting any intelligent race could spell disaster for the tribe. If only there was a cave. Li Meng thought to himself as he walked through the forest. Ideally, it would be a deep cave with multiple exits. A closed cave couldn't be used, or the smoke would become a deadly poison. Although the smoke would eventually dissipate, it wouldn't be as noticeable after being diluted by the cave. But Li Meng also knew that finding such a cave was easier said than done. In the following days, Li Meng traversed mountains, searching for a place to smelt iron. This search lasted 3 days. During those 3 days, Li Meng scoured every mountainous area nearby. Boss, we found it. There's a cave ahead. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, a goblin came running up to Li Meng excitedly. Unknowingly, Li Meng and his goblin followers had reached the foot of a mountain. The steep cliff rose almost vertically, several hundred meters high. Li Meng's eyes lit up with joy. Lead the way. Under the goblin's guidance, the group of goblins hurried forward. After about 200 meters, a steep cliff appeared before Li Meng. At the base of the cliff, there was a cave entrance. Judging by the shape of the crack, it seemed naturally formed. It was about 3 meters wide and pitch black inside. Outside the cave was a barren patch of black soil. The ground was somewhat damp, with large footprints visible on it. What a strange smell. I've never smelled it before. Neither have I. The goblins outside the cave were chattering. They had caught a whiff of an unfamiliar scent from the cave. Since it was a scent they had never encountered, they didn't know what it was. Li Meng also detected a foul odor. It was the smell of excrement, mixed with other unpleasant scents. Could it be an ogre? Li Meng thought of the future predicted by the simulated life. In that future, he would encounter an ogre. Boss, there's movement. At that moment, there was a commotion in the cave. It was a thud sound, heavy footsteps. Hide quickly. Sensing something, Li Meng's expression changed slightly. He turned and ran into the depths of the forest. The other goblins, seeing their leader run, followed closely behind into the forest. Back in the forest, Li Meng didn't stray far from the cave. Instead, he hid in a bush outside the cave. The other goblins did the same, hiding in various concealed vegetation. The noise from the cave grew louder. Suddenly, a massive shadow appeared at the cave entrance. Under the goblin's terrified gaze, a gigantic creature emerged from the cave. It had gray skin and a bald head. Its physique was incredibly robust, nearly 5 meters tall, larger than the goblin leader. Its enormous body appeared rounded, with exceptionally thick limbs. Its bowl-sized eyes spun around, giving it a somewhat foolish look. Cave Ogre. Level, 71. Strength, 317. Defense, 614. Agility, 151. Magic, 36. Enhanced Stone Skin, LV3, Defense plus 300. Physical Regeneration, LV1, Increased Healing Speed. My God! The terrifying attributes of the Cave Ogre startled Li Ming. How could he capture such a powerful monster? With traps? Traps weren't foolproof. How deep would a trap need to be to trap this monster? Even if it were trapped, how would he capture it? The ogre outside the cave sniffed with its large nose. It seemed to catch a whiff of a very unfamiliar scent. But with its not-so-sharp sense of smell, it couldn't detect the goblins hiding in the forest. Soon it began to walk step by step toward the forest. The cave ogre entering the forest was like a giant. Wherever it went, low branches and leaves were forcefully pushed aside. Follow it. Using the vegetation as cover, Li Ming cautiously followed it. Although the other goblins were terrified, they still followed their leader. Soon, the cave ogre stopped in front of a massive fruit tree. It grabbed the trunk with both hands and shook it vigorously. Fist-sized, purple fruits fell to the ground with a rustling sound. After completing this, it sat down under the tree. With practiced hands, it picked up the purple fruits from the ground and began to eat. Is the ogre a vegetarian? This scene made Li Ming, hiding in the forest, wonder. Such a large creature, named ogre, turned out to be a vegetarian. Of course, it might also be an omnivore. After all, most humanoid creatures are omnivores. Unlike goblins, which are purely carnivorous. Time passed slowly, and the ogre under the tree continued eating the fruits. It ate for a full 2 hours before stopping. Just when Li Ming thought the ogre would return to the cave, it fell asleep under the tree. A peculiar smell wafted over, making Li Ming wrinkle his nose. Is this the smell of fermentation? Looking at the sleeping ogre, Li Ming's eyes brightened. Could the ogre be drunk? The fruits on the tree were clearly overripe and starting to rot. Rotting would cause the fruits to ferment, making the ogre drunk. With such high defense, it should be impossible to kill it, right? Rather than subduing it, Li Ming hoped to kill it and gain its skills. Either of the two skills would greatly enhance his strength. But killing it would be a waste. Such a large creature would be the best labor force. Gobu go, take all the goblins and make bark ropes. Li Ming instructed the goblin beside him. It nodded and scurried away. It gathered all the goblins and ran into the depths of the forest. Watching the sleeping ogre, Li Ming pondered. The future predicted by the simulated life could only serve as a reference. In the current situation, there was no need to set traps. If the ogre was truly drunk, it wouldn't wake up easily. This was his chance, the chance to capture the ogre. About 5 hours later, Gobu Gu returned with the goblins. Each goblin carried a bundle of bark ropes. Come, follow me. Li Ming, gathering his courage, left the bushes and approached the ogre under the fruit tree. Although the goblins were scared, they mustered the courage to follow their leader. Li Ming led the goblins quietly to the ogre's side. He gestured with his hand. A goblin quickly handed him a bark rope. Li Ming carefully tied the bark rope around the ogre's feet. Though it might not be effective, it was better than nothing. The ogre was in a deep sleep and didn't wake up despite Li Ming's efforts. Li Ming used 5 ropes to bind the ogre's legs, wrapping them over and over. Come on, push it over. The goblin underlings quickly gathered around their boss. With faces full of fear, they placed their hands against the ogre's back. The ogre was lying on its side against the mountain, making it easy to push. Push! At Li Ming's command, the goblins pushed with all their might. The ogre's massive body flopped over limply, landing face down on the ground. Its huge breath stirred up the dust on the ground. Quick, bring the bark ropes. Li Ming hurriedly tied the ogre's hands behind its back. To prevent the ogre from using its strength, a good binding method was needed. Li Ming first tied the ogre's hands together. Then he used 3 bark ropes to connect the hands to the neck. This way, any struggle would cause discomfort to the ogre's neck. The more it struggled, the tighter the bark ropes around its neck would become. No matter how strong the ogre was, it couldn't use its strength if it was bound. No, we need an extra measure. Li Ming used a few more bark ropes to bind the ogre's feet to its neck. This way, if the ogre tried to break the ropes on its feet, the ropes on its neck would pull forward. With this pull, the ropes binding its hands and neck would tighten. Looking at the ogre tied up like a dumpling, Li Ming nodded in satisfaction. Let's go hide in the forest. Whether it would work or not could only be known once the ogre woke up. Hearing they could get away from the terrifying ogre, the goblins ran back to the forest. In the following time, Li Ming patiently waited for the ogre to wake up. Time passed slowly, hour by hour. As the sun was about to set and night was falling, the ogre finally woke up. Roar! A panicked roar echoed through the forest, scattering the birds. Under the fruit tree, the ogre rolled around in panic. Its immense strength made the bark ropes on its body creak. The more it struggled, the stronger the choking sensation on its neck became. The ogre howled continuously in its frenzied struggle, its voice growing hoarser. After struggling for a full 2 hours, it lay on the ground, panting heavily. By this time, a third of the bark ropes on its neck had snapped. Seeing the ogre had stopped struggling, Li Ming, hidden in the bushes, breathed a sigh of relief. If the ogre continued to struggle, the bark ropes would eventually break. All right, time to step on myself. Li Ming stood up and emerged from the bushes. In his hand was a whip made from bark ropes. The whip was also entwined with some thorny vines. The vines were a poisonous plant from the forest. They had only one effect. Once pricked, they caused intense pain. Though not fatal, the pain would last for days. Even goblins couldn't resist this poison when pricked. Despite the ogre's high defense, its body wasn't made of steel muscles and iron bones. As soon as Li Ming appeared, the ogre spotted him. Its huge eyes locked onto Li Ming. It opened its massive mouth and let out a roar. Walking forward, Li Ming chuckled and flicked the whip. A loud snap echoed far and wide. Li Ming flicked the whip again, striking the ogre's back. Roar! The ogre roared in pain, rolling its body towards Li Ming. Li Ming swung the whip again, striking the ogre's rear. A bloody welt immediately appeared on its rear. Though it only broke the skin, it was enough. Stop resisting and obediently become my underling. For a moment, the forest echoed with the snap of the whip. The long whip whistled through the air as Li Ming swung it, accompanied by the pained roars. Time passed slowly as the sun set and night fell. Even in the darkness, the sound of the whip didn't cease. Early the next morning, in the forest near the fruit tree, you stubborn mule, still fierce. Looking at the ogre, not far away, still growling at him, Li Ming rolled his eyes. Breathing heavily, he tossed aside the misshapen whip in his hand. After whipping it all night, the ogre still looked fierce. Its gaze towards Li Ming was filled with hatred. Again, beside him, Gobu quickly handed over a new whip. The temporarily halted sound of the whip resumed in the forest. In the following days, Li Ming devoted himself to taming the ogre. It was a torment for the ogre and a torment for himself. On the 5th day, still under the fruit tree, "Be good. Being my underling won't be a loss. I'll make sure you live well." Li Ming held a purple fruit, tried to entice the ogre. Though the ogre lay on the ground, barely alive and lacking spirit, its gaze towards Li Ming was still filled with animosity. Faced with Li Ming's offering, it let out a roar. Its massive body suddenly flipped, pressing down towards Li Ming. Li Ming frowned slightly and stepped back to avoid the ogre's body. With a slightly cold expression, a hint of impatience flashed in Li Ming's eyes. "Seems you're only fit to be a piece of meat." Li Ming tossed aside the whip in his hand and gestured to the goblin underlings behind him. "Eat it alive." After 5 days of relentless taming, Li Ming was on the verge of giving up. He just wanted to end this and get a good night's sleep. Hearing their boss's words, the goblins were momentarily stunned. Then they showed excitement, grinning to reveal sharp teeth. With a cheer, the goblin underlings pounced on the ogre with greedy faces. The goblins on the ogre's body frantically gnawed at its flesh. With one bite, they tore off a large chunk of meat. Roar! The intense pain made the ogre let out a weak roar. But the weakened ogre had lost its ability to resist. Yet a miraculous scene unfolded. The wounds caused by the goblin's bites began to regenerate visibly. This sight greatly intrigued Li Ming. Could it be the effect of a body regeneration skill? With eyes brightening, Li Ming lunged onto the ogre's body. Opening his menacing mouth, he tore a piece of flesh from the ogre's thigh. So tough, the ogre's meat was extremely unpalatable. Tough and chewy, like rubber bands. But to gain a skill, he couldn't care about that. 1 bite, 2 bites, 3 bites. Li Ming devoured piece after piece of the ogre's flesh, but the system prompt never appeared. Could it be that eating the heart offers the highest chance of gaining a skill? Steel muscles and iron bones and wind blade were both skills obtained by eating hearts. Skill Devour activated successfully. Acquired skill Body Regeneration. The system's prompt suddenly appeared, dispelling Li Ming's doubts. It seems that acquiring skills has nothing to do with the heart. Li Ming stopped gnawing on the ogre. All right, stop eating. The boss's order made the goblin reluctantly end its feast. Although not yet full, the goblin, with its mouth full of blood, looked satisfied. Since you don't want to be my underling, then you'll become the Tang monk meat of the tribe. The big guy in front of him was a level 70 creature. Eating its flesh would allow the goblins to evolve quickly. It had the body regeneration skill, so, as long as the amount was controlled, it wouldn't affect its life. Thus, Li Ming cruelly announced the ogre's future fate. Gobu go, give it some fruit to eat, but not too much, just enough to keep it from starving. At this moment, Li Ming had lost interest in the ogre. With a blank expression, he glanced at the ogre and then turned to walk into the forest. After wasting so many days, he had to make up for the lost time. Woo-woo! The ogre seemed to understand its fate. The ferocity in its eyes vanished completely. It weakly whimpered at Li Ming. The ogre's whimpering made Li Ming pause. Li Ming turned to look at the ogre behind him and grinned. Good, it's right to be scared. Seeing the ogre's pleading look, Li Ming knew he had succeeded. Li Ming walked over to the ogre. Picking up a fruit from the ground, Li Ming fed it to the ogre again. This time, the ogre opened its mouth. Li Ming tossed the purple fruit into the ogre's mouth. The ogre, having not eaten for days, chewed with relish. Next, Li Ming fed a few fermented fruits into the ogre's mouth. The fact that the ogre was afraid indicated that it was an intelligent creature with rich emotions. If it were a goblin, it would be different. Goblins would either flee or fight to the death. There was no third option. Bring all the fruits over. The goblin underlings quickly ran to the fruit tree. In the following time, Li Ming used the fruits to soothe the ogre. The ogre, starved for 5 days, devoured the food ravenously. Watching the ravenous ogre, Li Ming smiled. Then Li Ming did something astonishing. He climbed onto the ogre's body to untie the bark ropes on its hands. This scene filled the goblin underlings with fear. Their steps involuntarily retreated. When the last bark rope was untied, the ogre's hands regained freedom. Just as the goblins were about to turn and flee, they found that the ogre did not attack the boss. The ogre, with its hands free, sat up and began picking up fruits from the ground to eat. Li Ming continued to untie the bark ropes on the ogre's legs. Before long, Li Ming had untied the bark ropes on the ogre's legs. The ogre, bound for 5 days, regained its freedom. Thus, Li Ming gained a cave ogre underling. Half an hour later, Li Ming followed his newly acquired underling into its home. Is there wind? The cave was quiet and pitch black. Li Ming could feel a cool breeze brushing past his ear. The cave was an air inlet, indicating there was another exit. The space in the cave was larger than Li Ming had imagined. After delving less than 30 meters into the cave, the space became extremely wide. Is this moisture? The air was very humid, and Li Meng faintly heard the sound of water. In the stalagmite-filled cave, Li Meng continued forward. The goblin underlings and the big ogre silently followed behind him. The goblins were filled with fear towards the big ogre. They followed far behind the ogre, not daring to get close, afraid that the ogre's giant hand would grab them and stuff them into its mouth. Compared to the goblin underling's fear, Li Meng remained calm. The ogre was simple-minded and couldn't hide its emotions. Since it didn't attack him upon regaining freedom, it would never attack him in the future. I'll call you Binbin from now on. Binbin, did you live here before? Well, this wasn't exactly a good place. Wind blowing into the cave would lower the temperature inside. More importantly, there seemed to be an underground river deep in the cave. Upon entering the cave, Li Meng felt a chill. Binbin looked at the boss with a puzzled expression, not understanding what he was saying. It raised its sturdy right hand and pointed at the cliff wall. Li Meng looked up, and upon seeing it, his face showed understanding. It turned out Binbin's nest was in a cave on the cliff wall. The cliff wasn't vertical, but stepped. While goblins found it hard to climb, it was easy for Binbin. Let's go. Let's see what's ahead. With his underlings in tow, Li Meng continued forward. After walking for a while, delving several hundred meters, an underground river appeared before Li Meng. The water flowed from a spring on the right side. The current was very rapid, forming a crystal-clear stream in the cave after years of erosion. Binbin strode forward, crouching by the water, staring intently at the surface. Just as Li Meng wondered what Binbin was doing, Binbin suddenly thrust its hand into the water, seemingly trying to catch something. When Binbin withdrew its hand, it held a large cartilaginous fish. Black rock fish. Level 6. Strength 3. Defense 2. Agility 7. Magic 1. It resembled an eel, entirely black. Binbin brought the black rock fish to its mouth and took a bite. This bite split the cartilaginous fish in two. Seeing this, Li Meng chuckled. Binbin wasn't a herbivore, but an omnivore. Binbin offered the bitten half of the cartilaginous fish to Li Meng. Looking at the half-meter-long fish, Li Meng caught it with both hands. He opened his mouth and tore off a big chunk of fish meat. It was sticky, but the taste was quite good. Here, after a few bites of fish meat, Li Meng tossed the remaining fish meat to the goblin underlings. The goblin underlings swarmed to snatch the fish meat on the ground. Li Meng moved forward to the water's edge to wash his hands. Splash! As soon as he squatted down, a giant creature suddenly burst from the water in front of him. A 1.5-meter-long black rock fish opened its sharp mouth and lunged at Li Meng. Seeing the attacking black rock fish, Li Meng rolled his eyes. He punched it, hitting the fish's chin. The immense force sent the black rock fish flying, crashing into Binbin. Binbin instinctively caught the black rock fish. It looked at the boss beside it, then at the black rock fish in its hand. Confused, it began eating the fish meat. How did this fish end up in its hand? Li Meng casually picked up a stone from the riverbank and stood up. Let's go, we're heading out. The cave was vast, and there was no need to venture further in. The space here was more than sufficient. With wind and water, it was the perfect spot for iron smelting. Li Meng then led the goblin underlings out of the cave. Outside the cave, Li Meng began assigning tasks to the goblin underlings. You, and you, go into the forest and gather stones like this. Li Meng showed the goblin underlings the stone in his hand. The stone was one Li Meng had picked up by the river in the cave. It was a dull gray and iron ore. This indicated that the cave was a natural iron mine. The three goblins he pointed at hurriedly ran towards the forest. Gobu, you guys go find some deadwood. Gobu nodded and led the remaining goblins into the forest. Binbin, let's go find some clay. Binbin obediently followed behind Li Meng. In the forest, Binbin, who was following Li Meng, reached out and poked Li Meng's back. What's up? Li Meng turned to look at Binbin. Binbin pointed at himself and made a deep sound from his throat. Boom, boom. Li Meng chuckled and pointed at Binbin with his right hand. Binbin. Then Li Meng pointed at himself. Boss. Binbin looked at the boss, then lowered his head to look at himself. He pointed at himself with his right hand. Binbin. Li Meng nodded. Binbin then pointed at Li Meng. Boss. Li Meng nodded again. And so, under Li Meng's guidance, Binbin learned his new name. In the following days, Li Meng focused on one thing: preparing for the iron smelting experiment. On the fourth day, by the underground riverbank in the cave. Boss, what are you doing? Seeing the boss neatly stacking split wood, Gobu curiously asked. Watch carefully, you'll be doing the same thing in the future. After laying the firewood flat, Li Meng placed a piece of iron ore on top. Put all these iron ores on top. The boss's command prompted the goblin underlings to quickly start placing the iron ore onto the firewood pile. Just one layer, don't stack them. After giving the instruction, Li Meng knelt on the ground. This startled the goblin underlings. Li Meng ignored their surprise. He took the dry wood and fluff he had prepared and began to drill wood to make fire. The wooden stick made a swish-swish sound as Li Meng rubbed it. Binbin sat nearby, curiously watching the busy goblins. In less than 10 minutes, Li Meng smelled smoke. Soon, thick white smoke emerged from the fluff. Li Meng quickly set down the stick and carefully blew on the fluff with both hands. Before long, a flame appeared in the darkness. It's fire, human fire. The appearance of the flame made Gobu let out a strange cry. Shut up! Li Meng glared at Gobu and quickly used the flame to ignite the dry grass in the firewood pile. As the dry grass caught fire, the flames roared to life. Binbin was also startled by the fire, his massive body trembling. In a moment, the firewood pile was blazing fiercely. The rolling heat waves spread around, making the goblins look on with amazement. They never expected the boss to create human fire just by rubbing for a while. Binbin, fetch water! Clapping his hands, Li Meng pointed to the bamboo buckets beside Binbin. Li Meng had found some bamboo while searching for clay in the forest. These bamboos were enormous, requiring several people to encircle them hand in hand. Li Meng used these bamboos to make some bamboo buckets. Binbin stood up, grabbed a bamboo bucket in each hand, and fetched 2 buckets of water from the river. Not far away, there was a pile of yellow clay. Pour it in and mix it by hand. Under Li Meng's hands-on guidance, Binbin used his massive hands to mix the yellow clay. Soon, the yellow clay gradually turned into clay. Seeing that the consistency was about right, Li Meng began using the clay to construct a blast furnace. Gobu, keep stacking the split wood, just like I did earlier. Seeing that the first pile of firewood was almost burned out, Li Meng instructed Gobu. Gobu nodded, some understanding. A group of goblin underlings began clumsily stacking the firewood. In no time, a pile of firewood was haphazardly assembled. The goblins placed some iron ore on top. Don't use your hands, use sticks. Seeing Gobu about to pick up the charcoal from the bonfire with his hands, Li Meng reprimanded him. Gobu flinched and quickly withdrew his hand. He carefully used 2 wooden sticks to pick up a piece of charcoal and placed it into the firewood pile. As the dry grass caught fire, the second pile of firewood began to burn. By this time, the first pile of firewood had already burned out. Only a ground full of charcoal and brittle iron ore remained. Take those brittle iron ores and smash them into powder on the stone over there. Remember, don't use your hands. The goblins imitated, using sticks to remove the scorching iron ore. The goblins placed the brittle iron ore on a smooth stone nearby and began smashing it with another stone. Since the iron ore had been made brittle by high heat, it shattered easily with a light tap. The small fragments were also easily crushed into powder. Once the iron ore was crushed into powder, it became iron or powder. Since it was an experiment, the first blast furnace wasn't large. Li Meng spent 5 hours constructing a 1.5-meter high blast furnace. He then spent 2 more hours drying the blast furnace. It should be ready. Looking at the well-formed blast furnace before him, Li Meng nodded repeatedly. Although the surface wasn't very smooth, it was his first time making a blast furnace, so some imperfections were acceptable. The blast furnace was narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. There was only a small smoke outlet and a feed inlet at the top. to supply oxygen and increase the temperature inside the furnace. There were 3 ventilation holes at the bottom of the blast furnace. Each ventilation hole was connected to a bamboo tube. The other end of the bamboo tube was attached to a simple bellows made from animal skin and bamboo. The bellows had a simple structure and didn't take much effort from Li Meng. Let's start then. Bin, load the materials. Bin, who had been waiting for a long time, used a bamboo bucket to pour charcoal into the blast furnace through the opening at the top. Then came the iron or powder, followed by more charcoal on top of the iron or powder. Finally, the feed inlet was sealed, leaving only a chimney made of bamboo. Li Meng then opened the iron outlet and used a burning piece of charcoal to ignite the dry grass at the bottom. As the dry grass caught fire, the inside of the blast furnace gradually began to burn. What are you waiting for? Start the bellows. Li Meng quickly called the goblin underlings to operate the bellows. The goblin underlings worked in pairs, panting as they pulled the bellows. As the bellows were operated, thick smoke billowed from the chimney. Soon, the blast furnace became scorching hot. Keep pulling, don't stop. To smelt iron, temperature was crucial. The temperature needed to reach at least 1,300 degrees to melt the iron or powder into molten iron. Will it fail? Li Meng frowned slightly as he looked at the blast furnace in front of him, radiating intense heat. The larger the blast furnace, the easier it is to store heat, and the higher the pressure will be. Higher pressure can lower the melting point of iron. If the blast furnace is too small, the heat will quickly dissipate through the furnace walls. If the wind power is insufficient, it's also difficult to quickly raise the furnace's temperature to 1,300 degrees. Boss, is it ready? The goblin pulling the bellows was drenched in sweat. Not only were they hot, but their hands were also sore and painful. Keep going. The goblins grimaced, but had to continue pulling. Boss, my hands are going to be useless. Don't stop. As the goblin minions wailed, time slowly passed. 5 hours later, at the underground riverbank in the cave, the blast furnace on the bank emitted astonishing heat. Even 5 meters away, one could feel the rolling heat waves. Standing beside the blast furnace, Li Meng used his hand to feel the temperature without touching it. An hour ago, the temperature inside the blast furnace had stopped rising. Li Meng knew the temperature inside the furnace had reached its limit. Then let's open the furnace. Looking at the blast furnace in front of him, Li Meng thought to himself, whether it succeeds is important, but not crucial. This was just an initial experiment, and Li Meng wasn't afraid of failure. Even if it failed, he would gain experience and wouldn't fail next time. Li Meng took a few steps back, bent down, and picked up the mold placed beside him. Then he placed the mold at the iron outlet. He used a stick to poke open the stone blocking the iron outlet. As the stone was moved aside, the scorching molten iron flowed out. This scene made Li Meng's eyes light up. He hadn't expected the first attempt at smelting iron in the blast furnace to succeed. The molten iron, like lava, continuously flowed into the mold. With pig iron, there was the possibility of making steel. Placing pig iron in a damp place to react with air and water would produce a large amount of rust. Refining rust with pig iron could yield low-carbon steel. Steelmaking isn't limited to just one method. Pig iron can also be broken into pieces for secondary smelting, and stirring the molten pig iron to increase contact with oxygen can oxidize the carbon in the iron. By controlling the carbon content through experimentation and stopping the refining process, medium carbon steel and high carbon steel can be obtained. Direct refining to oxidize carbon completely can yield low carbon wrought iron. Pouring molten pig iron onto red-hot wrought iron can produce high carbon steel. Strange, such a small blast furnace shouldn't reach the melting point of iron. Watching the molten iron flowing out of the outlet, Li Meng muttered to himself, could it be that the oxygen content in this world is different from Earth's? Higher oxygen content means a more vigorous fire. A more vigorous fire naturally results in higher temperatures. He didn't think much more about it. Success was success, and the result was what mattered most. With the success of the first experiment, it marked a good beginning. In the following days, Li Meng focused on one thing: teaching the goblin minions to familiarize themselves with the iron smelting process and how to make iron, temper, quench, forge, and other iron-making knowledge. Although goblins aren't very smart, they have strong imitation abilities. Li Ming didn't need the goblin minions to understand the principles of iron smelting. He just needed them to follow the steps and complete each part of the iron-making process. Half a month later, at the underground riverbank in the cave. This is an hourglass. When the sand inside runs out, it's time to open the furnace. Understand, on the riverbank, Li Ming held a simple hourglass made of bamboo. Goblins had no concept of time. To be precise, they had no way to measure time. The goblin minions on the riverbank nodded. Good. From today onwards, you will build the blast furnace yourselves and smelt iron. If you can produce molten iron, it's a success. If you succeed, each of you will earn a day's mating rights. If you fail, you'll never think about reproducing for the rest of your lives. Hearing that success would earn them mating rights, the goblins on the riverbank brightened up. They looked eagerly at their boss. Drool almost dripped from the corners of their mouths, because the goblins on the riverbank had eaten the cave ogre's meat. In just over half a month, 7 goblins had evolved into big goblins. Facing the eager goblin minions, Li Ming waved his hand. Go, you have 5 sunsets. Upon hearing this, the goblin minions on the riverbank quickly turned and ran towards the cave entrance. They had to start from scratch, selecting iron ore with high iron content. They also needed to find clay to make the blast furnace and wood for charcoal. Watching the goblin minions run towards the cave entrance, Li Ming grinned. Li Ming intended to train these 7 goblin minions into blacksmiths. Once they became blacksmiths, their descendants would inherit their craft. By then, the tribe would have a large team of blacksmiths. System: start the simulated life. Unknowingly, a month's cool-down had passed again. Li Ming was filled with anticipation for the future development of his life. Starting simulated life. You began your blacksmith career, and your efforts paid off as the tribe entered the Iron Age. You crafted your first long spear. You crafted your first crossbow. You began arming your tribe, and your tribe thrived. One of your hunting parties was ambushed and wiped out by lizardmen while retrieving spider silk from the ghost spider forest. Pigmen tribe traces were discovered in the east, and a pigmen tribe entered your territory. Due to the rapid population growth of the tribe, the food pressure led you to decide to wage war externally. Please make the following choice. 1. Seek revenge on the lizardmen. 2. Annihilate the pigmen tribe that entered your territory. 3. Cross the river to advance to the south bank and expand the hunting territory. Li Ming sat down on a large rock by the riverbank. Which of the 3 options should he choose? Sitting on the rock, Li Ming stared at the water in a daze. The lizardmen had survived in the swamp for countless years. They were a tough nut to crack, and attacking them wasn't wise. But the ghost spider forest was near the swamp. Without eliminating the lizardmen, obtaining spider silk would become a major issue. The second option was a big pitfall. Li Ming hadn't forgotten the future predicted by the last simulated life. In that future, the pigmen tribe thrived and gave birth to the Golden Pigman King because of the blast furnace he built. This indicated that the pigmen tribe was a large social group. Annihilating the migrating pigmen tribe might attract the attention of the larger group behind them. As for the third option, it could trigger an internal war. Crossing the river would enter Gobu Ba's territory. Li Ming wasn't confident enough to defeat Gobu Ba yet. If he lost in a leadership duel, he would lose everything. For him now, the third option was also a big pitfall. Choose to seek revenge on the lizardmen. In the end, Li Ming chose to seek revenge on the lizardmen.